Chapter 765. Brother-in-law. Wang Yinping's face was still flushed, and she rested her head on Song Qingshu's chest. Song Qingshu looked at the trophy in his arms with the attitude of a victor. Her body was well-proportioned and smooth, and there was not a trace of excess fat on her body. I really can't imagine how sister's body can withstand your torment every day. Wang Yinping had practiced martial arts since she was young, and she thought her body was much better than her sister's. But if even she couldn't withstand it, then wouldn't her sister be even more vulnerable? That's where you're wrong. Although your sister looks weak, she has practiced dancing since she was young. Her body isn't any worse than yours, and her endurance in this area is much stronger than yours. Although Song Qingshu hadn't had any further physical contact with Wang Yingebai, he was now experienced. He could tell that Wang Yingebai had an internal seduction body. Normal men wouldn't last more than 10 breaths on her body before they would lose their virginity. No wonder he hadn't heard any news of Tang Quobian having other women. With a wife like this, why would he need other women? How is that possible? Hearing that she couldn't compare to her sister in this area, Wang Yinping's face was full of disbelief. You don't believe me? When can I let you two compete on the same stage? Now that he had the antidote, Song Qingshu was in high spirits. He couldn't help but fantasize about Wang Yingebai. In your dreams. Thinking of that ridiculous scene, Wang Yinping's face turned red. Brother-in-law, promise me one thing. Don't tell sister what happened today, okay? Why? Song Qingshu asked curiously. I feel like I stole something from her. Wang Yinping pursed her lips and finally acted like a spoiled child. I don't care. You're not allowed to tell her. Wait until I think about it. I'll tell her myself. Okay then, but this is too unfair to you. Song Qingshu secretly let out a sigh of relief. Actually, if she pestered him to tell Wang Yingebai what happened today, he really didn't know how to face that gentlewoman. This was for the best. To be able to be with brother-in-law, Ping doesn't feel wronged. Wang Yinping hugged his arm and said with a face full of happiness. Looking at her sweet expression, Song Qingshu felt regret for the first time. If she knew the truth in the future, would it be too cruel? A man and a woman hugged each other tightly and slept through the night. The next day, after dawn, Song Qingshu and Wang Yinping searched around and finally found a way out of the valley. After searching around for a while, they were pleasantly surprised to find that Wang Yinping's little red horse was still nearby. Of course, Song Qingshu's own horse had long been abandoned. The two of them rode on the same horse back to the Xingfu. Wang Yinping's love for Song Qingshu was at its strongest. Along the way, he let Song Qingshu enjoy all the tenderness he could muster. However, when they were about to reach the city gate, Wang Yinping refused to ride on the same horse with him no matter what. Song Qingshu had no choice but to dismount and lead the horse towards the city gate. Coincidentally, they were going through the same city gate as before. The two soldiers guarding the city gate were also the same two soldiers. After the two of them entered the city, the two soldiers hurriedly ran to the side and whispered, Look, I wasn't wrong, right? They really ran to the wild outside the city. Damn it, this battle is too king intense. The man's clothes aren't in one piece, and the woman's pants are also missing a big chunk. Did you notice the gaze of the Qi Kingdom's princess when she looked at her brother-in-law? She must have been Ked last night. CK. It's infuriating to compare ourselves to others. On the same night, these nobles are King their beautiful sisters-in-law outside, while we can only guard the city gate and drink the northwest wind. Let's get over it. This is fate. There were not many people on the street in the early morning. Song Qingshu and Wang Yinping were chatting in low voices, making her tremble from time to time. Suddenly, Song Qingshu's body shook, and he stopped in his tracks. He looked at the lonely figure that was swaying and walking towards him from the side of the street. Brother Yang, long time no see. The person who came was Yanghua. Song Qingshu looked at his unshaven and slovenly appearance. Even before he got close, he could smell the strong smell of alcohol from his body. At the same time, his clothes were stained with moss that was unique to the city walls, and there was a lot of dew on his hair. Song Qingshu could not help but be secretly shocked. Looking at his appearance, he might have sat on the city wall and drank for the whole night. How did he become so decadent in such a short time? Brother Yang? Yangwa laughed self-mockingly. Now in the entire Jin kingdom, only you will call me Brother Yang. But is my surname really Yang? He mumbled indistinctly, not in a mood to stop and chat with Song Qing-shu. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly saw Wan Yinping sitting on the horse. He couldn't help but be shocked and blurt out, "Goo goo." Wan Yinping was looking lovingly at Song Qing-shu when she suddenly heard Yangwa's voice. She couldn't help but wake up and frowned. "You are the grandson of the king of Zhao who is stranded outside. Wan Yinbingda?" Yangwa had just happened to see the way Wan Yinping looked at Song Qing-shu. The way she looked at him was exactly the same as the way Xiao Longnu looked at him in the past. Coupled with his hangover, he immediately mistook Wan Yinping for Xiao Longnu. Now that he noticed her inadvertently disdainful expression, he immediately woke up. "No matter what I do, Gugu will not despise me." "You're not Gugu." Yangwa did not answer Wan Yinping's question and mumbled as he turned around and walked away with the wine pot. When Song Qing-shu heard this, he was shocked. What grandson of the king of Zhao? What Wan Yinbingda? The king of Zhao she was talking about should be Wan Yin Honglai. Yangwa could indeed be considered his grandson. But who the hell was Wan Yinbingda? You have been recuperating at home. No wonder you did not know about this. Wan Yinping explained. When the king of Zhao's son, Wan Yin Kong, died in the Song kingdom, his wife Munianci was pregnant at the time. When she heard the news of Wan Yin Kang's death, she disappeared from the Zhao palace. Since then, no one knows where she went. Because the king of Zhao did not have an heir, they declined. It was not until recently that Prince Hailing brought back Wan Yin Kang's posthumous son to acknowledge his ancestors. The king of Zhao's line saw hope for revival and was extremely grateful to Prince Hailing. Oh, that year the king of Zhao gave the posthumous son the name Wan Yinbingda, which is the Yangwa that you speak of. Oh, how did Wan Yin Kong become the king of Zhao's son? According to what I know, the king of Zhao's consort, Bao Shuo, was snatched back by the king of Zhao from a Song man called Yang Tiexin. Isn't Wan Yin Kong the child of her and her ex-husband Yang Tiexin? Song Qing-shu hurriedly asked. Chapter 766. Oh no! Song Qing was startled. He knew that he had exposed a flaw. He quickly smiled bitterly and said, "It might be because I was injured too badly in Kaifeng City and accidentally injured my brain. Now, my memory is a bit messed up. Can you tell me about it?" You were full of energy last night. You don't look like you were injured at all." Wan Yinping's face turned red and she mumbled something. Luckily, all her attention was on Song Qing, so she didn't have any suspicions. She then began to explain to him, making Song Qing's face light up. It turned out that after Wan Yin Honglai had used despicable means to obtain Bao Shira, she had been longing for Yang Tiexin. Although Wan Yin Honglai pretended to be magnanimous, he was actually very unhappy. Every time he saw Bao Shirua and Yang Tiexin's child, he felt that it was an eyesore. So he secretly had the child killed. Because of the clever method, Bao Shirua thought that the child had died of illness. However, even if she didn't resent Wan Yin Honglai, she was still very sad that her child had died and was depressed all day long. It just so happened that Bao Shirua was pregnant with his own flesh and blood. Wan Yin Honglai was worried that if she continued like this, both mother and child would be in trouble. So he found Elder Peng of the beggar sect and hypnotized Bao Shirua, altering her memories. When she gave birth to Wan Yin Honglia's son, she thought that it was her and Yang Tiexin's son, Yang Kong. Although Wan Yin Honglai wasn't a good person, he loved Bao Shirua very much. In order to untie the knot in her heart, he pushed the boat with the current and made his son Yang Kong. From then on, Wan Yin Zong Kong, the crown prince of the Jin kingdom, became Yang Kong. Guojing, Huang Rong, and the others interacted with him. Otherwise, no matter how magnanimous Wan Yin Honglai was, as a prince, he would not have doted on the son of his rival in love, as if he were his own. Later on, Yang Kong met Munianci, and the two of them became pregnant with a child, Yanghua. However, This secret was only known by a few high-ranking officials of the Jin Kingdom. Even Yang Kong and Mu Nianzi themselves did not know about it. It was even more impossible for Yang Guo to know that he actually had the blood of the royal family of the Jin Kingdom. His name was Wanyan Bingda, according to the genealogy. Because Yang Guo and Yang Kong looked too similar, Wanyan Liang immediately recognized him. Wanyan Liang's father was Wanyan Zonggan, the eldest son of great ancestor Wanyan Aguda. He was Wanyan Zongkong's cousin, so he naturally knew the secret. Wanyan Liang had inherited his father's title, so he also knew the reason. So when he met Yang Guo, he thought of a way to bring Yang Guo back to acknowledge his ancestors. Yang Guo had only recently learned about all of this, and he almost collapsed. But the records of the descendants of the imperial family were extremely detailed. In addition to the testimonies of the old members of the mansion, the facts were laid out in front of him. Yang Guo had no choice but to believe it. No wonder he looked so dejected. Song Qing sighed with emotion. It was like a person in his previous life who had been a Chinese all his life, and suddenly someone came to you and told you that you were actually a Japanese. No one could stand it. When Emperor Taizu was seriously ill, he didn't pass the throne to his son because he was surrounded by powerful enemies. Instead, he wanted to choose one of his younger brothers to be his successor. Emperor Taizong and King Zhao Honglai were the most capable among the younger brothers of Emperor Taizu. But because King Zhao didn't handle the issue of heirs well, Emperor Taizu passed the throne to Taizong. Wanyan Ping sighed as she talked about this. Song Qing had a strange expression on his face. Wanyan Honglai had unexpectedly become the younger brother of Emperor Taizu, Wanyan Aguda. This world was really chaotic, but he had to accept this. After slowly sorting out the genealogy of the Jin Kingdom, he now had a general understanding of the entire political situation of the Jin Kingdom. Emperor Taizu passed the throne to Taizong. Later, Taizong wanted to pass the throne to his son, but various forces opposed it. So, he had to return the throne to the descendants of Emperor Taizu. Seeing that there was no hope for the throne, Taizong's sons didn't want the throne to fall into the hands of Emperor Taizu's sons. Finally, after a struggle between Emperor Taizu and Taizong, the throne was passed to Emperor Taizu's young grandson, Wanyan Shi. In the early days of Emperor Shizong, the power of the imperial court was divided by Emperor Taizong's sons. Later, some of them died in battle, and some of them died of illness. Emperor Shizong barely regained the power of the imperial court. However, the long-term oppression made him weak. Soon, the power fell into the hands of Empress Peiman, Minister of the Imperial Court Wanyan Zongxian, Left Prime Minister Wanyan Zongmin, Right Prime Minister Wanyan Zongbin, and Prince Hailing Wanyan Liang. Among them, Minister of the Imperial Court Wanyan Zongxian was the representative of the collateral descendants of the Jin Kingdom. The Left Prime Minister Wanyan Zongmin was the representative of Emperor Taizu's line, and the Right Prime Minister Wanyan Zongbin was the representative of Taizong's line. Song Qing had always thought that Wanyan Liang, who was the most powerful person in the imperial court, was the weakest among them. You men are all bad. Song Qing was deep in thought when he suddenly heard Wanyan Ping say coquettishly, "Why do you suddenly say that?" Song Qing was extremely gloomy. Why do these women like to shoot all over the place? He really got shot even though he was lying down. In the past, the king of Zhao played with Princess Zhao like that. Isn't that enough to explain the problem? Originally, according to Wanyan Ping's personality in the past, she wouldn't have cared about this kind of thing. Instead, she admired the king of Zhao's decisiveness. But after giving her body last night, she was worried and unknowingly put herself in the shoes of Princess Zhao. The king of Zhao is the king of Zhao. I am he okay? Song Qing suddenly stopped breathing. He thought to himself, with his current disgraceful methods, what right do he have to look down on the king of Zhao? Feeling guilty? Wanyan Ping had only said it casually and didn't expect Song Qing to have such a reaction. She couldn't help but feel suspicious. Little girl, what nonsense are you talking about? See how brother-in-law will deal with you. As he spoke, Song Qing made threatening gestures and was about to pounce on her. Brother-in-law, spare me, Wanyan Ping exclaimed and hurriedly ran forward. The two of them fooled around and unknowingly returned to Tang Ku's residence. Suddenly seeing Wan Yinguobai standing at the door, Wan Yinping jumped to the side like a frightened rabbit. Song Qing also awkwardly retracted his hand that had been tickling her and laughed awkwardly. "You were waiting for us here?" "Yes, you haven't returned all night. If you hadn't returned, I would have sent someone to look for you." Wan Yinguobai's gaze swept over Wan Yinping. "You two have a good chat. I still have things to do in the palace, so I'll go back first." She didn't know why, but Wan Yinping found that she couldn't face her sister's gentle gaze. She instinctively wanted to run away. Who knew that the moment she turned around, a numbing sensation came from below, causing her body to freeze. Only then did she continue to climb onto her horse and hurriedly leave. Seeing that Wan Yinping had left, Song Qing didn't want to face Tang Quobian's wife alone. He hurriedly said, "Last night, she was bitten by a snake and fell off the cliff. We spent the whole night looking for a way out in the valley. I'm so tired, I'm going to sleep now." "Really?" Wan Yinguobai replied calmly. When Song Qing passed by her, she couldn't help but sigh. "It's fine if Ping is a child, but how can you be so careless? Her body hasn't fully grown yet. How can she withstand your torment?" Chapter 767. Song Qing was dumbfounded. Before he could say anything, Wan Yinjebi turned around and left expressionlessly. It was obvious that she did not want to listen to anything he had to say. Song Qing opened his mouth and tried to hold her back several times, but he gave up in the end. He sighed in his heart and thought, "That's good too. I don't have to think of ways to distance myself from her in the future. It's probably impossible for me to get close to her now." After returning to his room, Song Qing sat cross-legged on his bed and began to meditate. Last night's tumble down the slope was no less than the continuous palm attacks of dozens of martial arts masters. Even with his profound internal energy, he almost couldn't withstand it. Now that he had the antidote for the rouge intoxication, he decided to rescue Song Yuanxiao and the others at night. It would inevitably be a chaotic battle, so he had to ensure that he was in his best condition. And for all. During this period of time, he had been constantly injured. Fortunately, he had been nourished by Wan Yinping's pure yin qi last night, which allowed him to recover with twice the results with half the effort. After meditating until night, Song Qing finally opened his eyes. After this period of intentionally or unintentionally distancing themselves from him, coupled with the fact that she knew about him and her sister, Wan Yinjebi no longer stepped into his room. Song Qing was also happy to be free and unfettered. No matter what he wanted to do, he did not have to worry about how to avoid her. Seeing that it was getting late, Song Qing changed into his night clothes and used his lightness skill to rush toward the Jin Kingdom's palace. For him now, the Jin Kingdom's palace could be said to be a walk in the park. It didn't take him long to find the vicinity of the laundry yard. Song Qing hid in a nearby tree and carefully observed the defense of the courtyard for a while. Seeing that it was the same as before, he could not help but secretly nodded. He had to be careful. After all, he only had one chance. After all, the Jin Kingdom's imperial palace was heavily guarded. Once he failed, it would be difficult to rescue Song Yuanxiao and the others. Just as Song Qing was about to act, the door of a room where Song Yuanxiao and the others were imprisoned suddenly opened. A group of people came out, led by a young girl who was Wan Yinping. Two extraordinary guards followed behind her. They were the two masters whom Song Qing was afraid of when he first came to the laundry yard. During this period of time, he had already found out their identities from Wan Yinping. One of them was called Pusan Hutu, and the other was Pucha Shiji. They were both famous top masters of the Jin Kingdom, especially Pucha Shiji. He was born with extraordinary strength and had learned the internal energy cultivation method collected by the royal family. In terms of palm strength, many top masters in the world were not his match. Behind the two were a large number of guards, surrounding Song Yuanxiao and the others. Song Qing hurriedly steadied himself and decided to observe the situation first. Firstly, he had just had intimate contact with Wan Yinping. If he accidentally hurt her now, he would feel guilty for the rest of his life. Secondly, with Pusan Hutu and Pucha Shiji around, it would not be easy to rescue them. Although Song Qing was not afraid of the two with his current cultivation, this was the Jin Kingdom's palace after all. They could hold him back, but when a large number of guard arrived, it would be extremely difficult to rescue Song Yuanxiao and the others. I wonder what they are going to do. Song Qing was a little annoyed. If the Jin Kingdom wanted to kill Song Yuanxiao and the others, he would have no choice but to act. However, it did not seem like it. After all, they were still useful. If they really wanted to kill them, they could have done it in the house without anyone knowing. Could it be that they're going to change their place of detention? Song Qing was shocked. If that was the case, wouldn't all his plans be for naught? Soon, Song Qing let out a sigh of relief. It turned out that Song Yuanxiao and the others were not taken out of the courtyard, but to another palace in the courtyard. Song Qing's expression suddenly became strange. When he first investigated the washing clothes yard, he passed by these palaces and knew that there were many women living in them. Thinking back to how Wang Yinping had threatened Song Yuanxiao and the others, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Wang Yinping wouldn't really let Song Yuanxiao and the others become the son-in-law of the Song dynasty, would she? Master Song, Master Zhang, Master Yin, I have given you so much time to think. Now, I will give you one last chance. Are the three of you willing to cooperate with the Jin Kingdom? Wang Yinping's voice sounded, confirming Song Qing's suspicions. Song Yuanxiao and the others looked at each other and saw the hesitation in each other's eyes. However, no one was willing to speak. Song Qing had previously analyzed with them that the Jin Kingdom valued the Song dynasty's princesses very much and would not be willing to use them on them. It seems that the famous heroes of Wudang are just greedy and lecherous people. Wang Yinping immediately became angry. She waved her hand, and the guards who were waiting at the side took out the medicine they had prepared and poured it into the mouths of Song Yuanxiao and the others. Song Qing was too far away and could not save them in time. However, based on his judgment, this medicine should not be poison. It was very likely that it was that medicine. After thinking through this, Song Qing was not in a hurry to save them. Heroes, what you ate just now is a strange medicine from Western Xia's first-class hall. It is called Yin-Yang Harmony Powder. What is the effect of this medicine? Wang Yinping's face suddenly turned red. The three of you have a lot of experience in the world of martial artists. Even if you have never heard of it before, you should be able to guess what it is just by hearing its name. However, I have to remind you that if you do not find someone to balance your yin and yang within 4 hours after taking this medicine, you will die from the evil fire. The three of you may have strong willpower and would rather die than submit, but there are 3 princesses of the Song dynasty in this room. They have also taken this medicine. If you die, there will be no one to cure them of the poison, and they will also die. If the 3 of you are willing to personally kill the 3 princesses of the Song dynasty, then you will have no one to cure them of the poison for 4 hours. They will also die. Song Qing gasped in amazement when he heard this. Wang Yinping had been obedient and docile in his arms, but he did not expect that her schemes would be so vicious. Not only did she give Song Yuanxiao and the others an aphrodisiac, she even gave them a dignified reason to save the princesses. She reduced their chaotic feelings of guilt and destroyed their willpower. In truth, this combination was really brilliant. Song Qing could not help but admire his sister-in-law. At that moment, Song Yuanxiao and the others were shocked and angry. They started cursing, "Which you're so vicious. What kind of hero are you to use such a despicable scheme?" Wang Yinping's expression turned cold. "I've never been a hero. Bring them in." When she saw that Song Yuanxiao and the others had been sent into the room, Wang Yinping ordered her subordinates, "Guard outside. Once we're done, bring them back to the prison. No one is allowed to say a single word about what happened today. If I hear even a single word about this outside, all the guards on duty tonight will be beheaded. Do you hear me?" "Yes." The expressions of the group of guards turned cold as they replied, while trembling with fear. Wang Yinping nodded her head in satisfaction. Looking at the moving figures in the room, she laughed coldly and said to herself, "Tomorrow, this princess will use this scandal as a threat. I don't believe that the 3 of you won't submit." After laughing coldly a few times, Wang Yinping hurriedly left with Pu Sanhutu and Pu Cha and Shijie. This time, it was Song Qing's turn to be troubled. What should he do with the mess in front of him? Chapter 768. Now that Wan Yinping had left and her two top experts were gone, even though there were many guards in the laundry yard, Song Qingshu didn't place them in his eyes. But the problem was, what would he do after saving them? Thinking about the scene of him running around the palace with three lustful old men, Song Qingshu felt a wave of disgust. Actually, based on his previous experiences, he had a way to cure the poison of this aphrodisiac, but he needed a quiet place to slowly use his internal energy to cure it. But now that he was in danger, would the guards in the palace give him such a chance? Furthermore, he had only detoxified women in the past. Whether those methods would be effective on men was another matter. Even if they were effective, Song Qingshu shuddered at the thought of relieving the lust of a few old men. How could this process compare to detoxifying a charming and soft girl? Not to mention, there were still 3 other poison princesses. Was he really going to leave them and let them burn with desire to death? Song Qingshu weighed the pros and cons and finally made a deceptive decision. Wait and see. He would first wait for Song Yuanxiao and the others to cure the poison inside before he went to save them. Even though this seemed like a huge scandal, and if it got back to the Southern Song dynasty, Wu Dang would not be able to establish itself in Jianghu, but this matter was known to the heavens and earth. Apart from the people involved, only Wan Yinping and a few others knew. These normal guards wouldn't dare to leak even half a word. Therefore, it was completely possible to cover up this matter. As for the 3 Song dynasty princesses, he had long heard about the incident in the laundry yard. When the Jin invaded Bianjing, they captured a large number of imperial concubines and princesses. On the way back to the north, they were humiliated. To put it bluntly, other than a few infants who were still in swaddling clothes, the princesses of the laundry yard were already ruined flowers and willows. One more or one less wouldn't make any difference to them, and they wouldn't commit suicide like normal virgin girls. I can only inconvenience the 3 princesses. Song Qingshu sighed to himself. After all, he was a man and not a god. He had no other choice. However, he was still a little worried. He found a position with the weakest guards and used his qing gong to sneak in through the skylight. Looking down from the beam, the scene that greeted his eyes almost made Song Qingshu have a nosebleed. They saw Song Yuanxiao and the other 2 sitting cross-legged on the ground, their faces flushed red. However, the 3 gorgeously dressed women's robes were half undone, revealing a large portion of their snow-white bodies. They kept wrapping themselves around the 3 men, twisting and turning in their arms. Song Qingshu sized up the 3 princesses. They didn't seem to be young anymore. They were probably in their early 30s. However, they had pretty faces and could be considered beauties. Coupled with their special identities, they were quite charming overall. Princesses, please conduct yourself with dignity. Song Qingshu almost burst out laughing when he heard Song Yuanxiao's words. What kind of situation was this? How could he still say such a nerdy thing? Good brother, our bodies are so hot, so uncomfortable. What answered him was a coquettish voice. Even someone like Song Qingshu, who had been through a lot, felt half his body go limp, let alone Song Yuanxiao and the others. The princesses kept tugging at the clothes on their bodies. They even led Song Yuanxiao and the others' hands to their chests, their mouths letting out all sorts of murmurs of desire. Song Qingshu noticed that the last bit of clarity in the eyes of Song Yuanxiao and the others had faded. He knew that what was going to happen would happen. He didn't have a habit of peeping, so he quietly returned the way he came. I can't let them know that I just went there. Otherwise, if they find out that I just stood by and watched, I won't be able to keep my face. They'll all come after me with a knife. Song Qingshu secretly made up his mind. Song Qingshu stood guard outside for a while. When he heard the sounds in the palace gradually die down, he knew that it was about time. He sneaked back. He couldn't wait for them to finish before going in. At that time, the guards outside would also go in. The alluring scene in the palace made Song Qingshu secretly click his tongue. He saw that Song Yuanxiao and the others had already woken up and dressed up. Their faces were full of guilt and self-blame, and they kept apologizing to the three princesses. On the other hand, the three princesses were very calm, as if they were already used to this kind of thing. Song Qingshu's figure flashed, and he struck the sleeping acupuncture points of the three princesses. Looking at the astonished Song Yuanxiao and the others, he feigned a sorrowful expression. Qingshu came late. I'll let the three of you suffer. Suffer. Song Yuanxiao and the others blushed. Even though they were feeling guilty, they couldn't help but admit that the feeling just now had nothing to do with suffering. The few of us have done such a shameful thing. How can we have the face to go back and see Master? Song Yuanxiao was ashamed and angry at the same time. He raised his palm and chopped down on the top of his head. Song Qingshu jumped in fright. He only relaxed when he realized that his hands were powerless. He couldn't help but say, "You guys can't be blamed for this. You can only blame the genes for being too shameless and cunning." That's right, especially that witch Wan Yinping. As a woman, she actually thought of this kind of evil plan. Zhang Songshi was so angry that his whole body was trembling. Song Qingshu thought to himself, if you knew that Wan Yinping was already my woman, who knows what you would think? He took the opportunity to comfort them. If you guys commit suicide now, other than making your enemies happy, it still won't help the situation. The genes can still use this matter to smear Wu Dang's name. And with the evidence of your suicide, I'm afraid the world will have to believe it even if they don't want to. Then what should we do? Enlighting had already lost his soul. His mind was a mess, and he asked subconsciously. Flatly deny this. Song Qingshu said quickly. I've already found the antidote for rouge intoxication. I'll save you guys now. When the time comes, the genes can only suffer in silence. Without evidence, their conspiracy can't be carried out. This, Song Yuanxiao was suddenly a little moved. Big brother, what Qingshu said makes a lot of sense. Our personal honor is small, but Wu Dang's reputation is big. Zhang Songshi hurriedly said. No, Song Yuanxiao said in a low voice. It's easy for us to leave, but what about them? The genes will definitely vent their anger on us, and they'll suffer inhumane abuse. Although we can hide it from the world, we can't hide it from our own hearts. We cultivators cultivate our own hearts. How can we just leave after hurting them? Zhang Songshi and Yin Lighting nodded. That's right. Leaving like this is really unchivalrous. Then what do you guys want to do? Song Qingshu was also speechless. Now that time was tight. They were actually so pedantic. We've heard that the princesses of the Song dynasty were kidnapped by the genes. Now that we know they're in the laundry yard, if we can save the princesses and bring them back to our country, first, we can save our Han people's face, and second, we can save them from the abyss of suffering. This can also reduce the sins we've committed today. Song Yuanxiao couldn't help but look ashamed. Song Qingshu was immediately dumbfounded. It's easy for you guys to say. Just to save the three of you, I'll have to rack my brain. There are at least 10 or 20 princesses in the laundry yard. How can I save them? Chapter 769. Song Yuanxiao shook his head. Qingshu, I've already made up my mind. If you can't save all these princesses, I won't leave either. Zhang Songshi and Yin Lighting hesitated for a moment before expressing their agreement. Don't tell me you don't care about Wudong's reputation anymore. Song Qingshu was angry and anxious. He really didn't know what to say. Qingshu, you don't have to say anything. Zhang Songshi also spoke up. Since we've committed a mistake, we should face it calmly. Master is not an ordinary person. After knowing the situation here, he will definitely agree with our actions. Song Qingshu was secretly impressed when he saw how the three of them had changed from fear to determination. He then looked at the three pitiful princesses on the ground and remembered the indignation he felt when he read about the humiliation of Jing Kong in his previous life. A heroic spirit rose in his heart. Fine, let me defy the heavens and change fate. Although he was excited, he still maintained a clear mind and quickly analyzed the situation. To save these princesses, we need a long-term plan. I'm afraid it won't be possible today. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, I'll have to trouble you to suffer here for a period of time, and that witch, Wan Ping, will have to feign civility." Zhang Songshi was instantly overjoyed. "Qing Shu, we're already overjoyed that you're willing to take such a huge risk to save them. This little bit of hardship is nothing. However, that witch will definitely use this as a threat tomorrow to force us to learn the secret arts of Wudong. How should we deal with this?" In Lighting said with a worried expression. "That's easy," Song Qingshu said quickly. "When the time comes, you'll give her 9 true and 1 false incantation to ensure that she can deal with it while retaining the essence of Wudong's unique skills. You're more familiar with Wudong's martial arts than I am, so you'll have to figure out how to balance it out." Zhang Song, she couldn't help but be overjoyed. "This is a brilliant plan. Qingshu, how did you think of this? It's all your fault for not having read The Legend of the Condor Heroes." Song Qingshu cursed inwardly and hurriedly said, "Now is not the time to talk about this. The guards outside will be coming in soon. I will leave first. Take care." After unsealing the acupoints of the 3 princesses, Song Qingshu tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and flew away like a feather. Qingshu's lightness kung fu is truly unparalleled. Zhang Song, she couldn't help but exclaim, "Fourth brother, you flatter me too much." Although Song Yuan Xiao said this, his face still revealed a trace of pride. "Eldest senior brother, fourth senior brother, I have a presumptuous request." In Lighting suddenly stammered. "What is it?" Song Yuan Xiao and Zhang Song, she looked at each other. They didn't know what was making him feel so awkward. "About today's matter, if we die in the Jin Kingdom, it'll be fine. But if we're lucky enough to return to Wudong sect, I hope you too can keep this a secret in front of Bu Hui." In Lighting looked embarrassed. "Don't worry, we'll definitely keep our mouths shut in front of sister-in-law." Song Yuan Xiao and Zhang Songshi's faces turned red, thinking that this wasn't something to be proud of. "Weren't we the same as you?" At this moment, the 3 princesses had already woken up. The guards outside had also rushed in one after another. The 3 of them shut their mouths and did not say another word. After coming out of the laundry yard, Song Qingshu was bored to death as he walked around the back palace. It could be said that he had a terrible headache. If he wanted to save those pitiful princesses of the Song dynasty, there seemed to be 2 problems. One was how to rescue so many people from the heavily guarded imperial palace, and the other was how to safely transport them out of the city after rescuing them. No matter which aspect it was, Song Qingshu was at his wit's end. "Let's find a chance to contact the princesses of the laundry yard first. I have to figure out how many of them are there and their situations before I can formulate a plan accordingly." Song Qingshu's mind was in a mess, but he finally sorted out a clue. With such a big commotion today, there was no way he could go to the laundry yard. Song Qingshu decided to return to Tang Qua's mansion first. However, he had only taken a few steps when he suddenly had an idea. He changed his direction and walked towards Xiao Xingwo's residence. Song Qingshu did not know why he suddenly decided to go there. Perhaps he wanted to try his luck and see if he could meet the yellow-robed woman again. However, he also knew that this idea was a bit ridiculous. Last time, the yellow-robed woman had left without a sound. Would she come back to see a little eunuch? In a dark corner, Song Qingshu quietly put on Xiao Xingwo's human skin mask and swaggered into the imperial palace with Xiao Xingwo's face. He felt a little diffident in his heart. Xiao Xingwo had disappeared for a few days. Did anyone suspect anything? Also, he had an appointment with the Empress once every 3 days. He did not know what the consequences would be if he stood her up. Xiao Xingwo's residence was pitch black. It did not seem like anyone was there. However, with Song Qingshu's cultivation, he could faintly sense a faint aura inside. He did not know if it was the yellow-robed woman or someone else with ulterior motives. After all, Xiao Xingwo's death was unclear. He did not know who in the vast imperial palace wanted his life. Song Qingshu had no choice but to be careful. On the surface, Song Qingshu pretended to be unguarded and swaggered inside. As soon as he pushed the door open, a cold light flashed in front of his eyes. Song Qingshu hesitated for a moment. He did not fight back. Instead, he pretended to be panic-stricken and said, Heroine, spare me." As soon as he spoke, he cursed inwardly. Logically, a little eunuch like Xiaox Singwo should not be able to distinguish whether the person hiding in the dark was a man or a woman. Sure enough, the cold voice of the yellow-robed woman came into his ears. "How do you know it's me?" Song Qingshu rolled his eyes and came up with an idea. He pretended to be confused and said, "If it's not the heroine, could it be someone else?" "Humph." The yellow-robed woman withdrew her long sword and seemed to accept his explanation. She turned around and walked into the inner room. It could be seen that she was staggering and her face was paler than before. Song Qingshu asked subconsciously, "Heroine, are you hurt again?" "It's none of your business." The yellow-robed woman leaned against the bed and sat down. Although she looked tired and weak, her peerless beauty did not diminish. When Song Qingshu was sizing her up, she also raised her head to look at him. Noticing Song Qingshu's gaze, she was startled at first. Then a little angry, she said, "If you keep looking, I'll dig your eyeballs out." Song Qingshu hurriedly withdrew his gaze and said with some dissatisfaction, "Isn't beauty for people to look at? I don't know why you are so excited." The yellow-robed woman was so angry that she laughed and said, "You are an eunuch. What do you know about beauty?" Song Qingshu immediately shouted, "The eunuch's missing parts are not his eyes. Why can't I see beauty?" A faint blush appeared on the yellow-robed woman's pale face. She pursed her lips and snorted, "Shameless." Chapter 770. I found that I underestimated you before. The yellow-robed woman leaned against the headboard, her eyes wide open as if deep in thought. Song Qingshu's heart jumped, and he said unnaturally, "What do you mean? I've secretly come back a few times in the past few days, but I was surprised to find that you haven't come back." The suspicion in the yellow-robed woman's eyes grew stronger. "You have a lot of secrets." Song Qingshu was secretly shocked. In order to get the antidote for rouge intoxication, he had spent all his time on Wanyan Ping. He didn't have the time to come back and pretend to be a eunuch. His eyes turned, and he thought, I didn't think that heroine would care about me so much. I'm really touched. Ever since I was young, I've always been looked down upon by others. Now that I can receive Fairy Sister's care, even if I die right now, my life will be worth it. Who cares about you?" The yellow-robed woman's eyebrows rose and her cheeks reddened. She was obviously annoyed with Song Qingshu's words. Song Qingshu deliberately pretended to be confused. "Fairy Sister, if you don't care about me, then why do you come every day? Who wants to come every day?" The yellow-robed woman sat up in annoyance. "If it wasn't for the fact that I haven't unsealed your acupuncture point, I wouldn't have bothered to come back. Also, don't call me Fairy Sister." Song Qingshu saw that her face was flushed and her eyes were wandering. He couldn't help but sigh. She really is a fairy with a natural charm. Noticing his gaze, the yellow-robed woman became annoyed again. Song Qingshu quickly said, "If I don't call you Fairy Sister, then what should I call you? I can't keep calling you heroine, right?" The yellow-robed woman hesitated and said in a low voice, "My surname is Yang." "Nonsense. Of course I know your surname is Yang." Song Qingshu gnashed his teeth in hatred. He had put in so much effort just to know her first name, not her surname. However, he also understood that in this era, other than the people closest to them, women generally wouldn't tell others their names. Even if he wanted to ask, he couldn't find any excuse. "Come here." The yellow-robed woman beckoned to him. "What?" Song Qingshu couldn't react for a moment. The yellow-clothed woman frowned. She didn't know why she was so easily angered by the little eunuch in front of her. She said unhappily, "If you want to bleed to death from your 7 orifices, you don't have to come over." Only then did Song Qingshu remember that he had been hit by her unique meridian sealing technique. If it was not released in time, he would bleed from his 7 apertures and die. Even though he had moved his acupoints when the yellow-robed woman sealed them, he naturally couldn't show it now. "Are you really so cruel to do this to me? I always thought that the young lady was joking with me," Song Qingshu said in surprise. The yellow-robed woman said indifferently, "If you still don't come over, I don't mind killing you again." I'm coming." Song Qing-shu ran to her side and immediately smelled a faint fragrance that was neither orchid nor musk. A thought immediately appeared in his mind, and he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Are these women's cosmetics pickled? Why do they all smell so good? Noticing that Song Qing-shu was in a daze again, the yellow-robed woman couldn't help but want to laugh. It wasn't strange for other men to be in a daze because of her beauty, but this little eunuch in front of her was obviously not for this reason. Since she knew him, she found that he would be in a daze from time to time. He really was a somewhat silly little eunuch. Casually sealing a few acupoints on his chest, the yellow-robed woman snorted, "Okay, now you don't have to worry about bleeding from your 7 orifices for the time being." "Thank you, Miss Yang." Song Qing-shu suddenly came back to his senses, and his smile suddenly became a bit stiff. "Wait, what do you mean by for the time being?" Seeing his deflated appearance, the yellow-robed woman couldn't help but smile. "For the time being is for the time being. Although I help you unseal your previous acupoints so that you won't bleed immediately, I have sealed your new acupoints again. If I don't unseal them for you after a while, you will still bleed from your 7 orifices." "Ah." Song Qing-shu's expression suddenly changed. He went up and hugged the yellow-robed woman's legs, crying and making a fuss. "My great aunt, you can't play with me like this. Hey, what are you doing? Let go of me." The yellow-robed woman was angry and anxious. She tried several times but failed to get rid of him. Song Qing-shu hugged her legs tightly and rubbed his face on her legs, wiping his snot and tears on her skirt. He secretly vented his hatred in his heart. "Humph. I've always been scared by you. I have to take advantage of you to relieve the hatred in my heart. If you don't let go, don't blame me for being impolite." Since she was a child, the yellow-robed woman had never been so close to a man. Although the other party was just a eunuch, her face was still as red as an apple. Although this woman's mouth is a bit fierce, her heart is really not bad. If it was a cruel and merciless person, they would have kicked this little eunuch away. Song Qing-shu saw that he had taken advantage of enough, so he stopped while he was ahead and let go of the yellow-robed woman before she completely exploded. The yellow-robed woman's chest rose and fell violently. She couldn't help but glare at Song Qing-shu fiercely. After a long time, she suppressed the anger in her heart. "If it was another man who dared to treat me like this, I would have killed him long ago. Seeing that you... it was an unintentional mistake, I will temporarily spare your life. However, you cannot escape punishment. Since your hands touched me, cut off your hands to apologize to me." Song Qing-shu was immediately dumbfounded. He had just praised her kindness. How come he was slapped in the face in the blink of an eye? Seeing his dumbfounded appearance, the yellow-robed woman's lips moved slightly, but she quickly covered it up. "Of course, if you can do one thing for me, I won't pursue this matter." "Don't say one thing. Even if it was 10, I would agree." Song Qing-shu hurriedly put on an expression of fear and trepidation. Inside, he was thinking with the yellow-robed woman's martial arts. What matter would she need the help of a little eunuch to do? Last time, from the words of those 2 little eunuchs, you seem to be a favored person in front of the Empress? The yellow-robed woman casually mentioned. Song Qing-shu's heart jumped, and for a moment, he didn't know what she was planning. "I can't be considered a favored person. It's just that the Empress sometimes summons me to do some things." "Then you must know the way to the Emperor's palace?" The yellow-robed woman's eyes were burning. Why did it sound more and more strange? It felt like she was going to assassinate someone. Song Qing-shu really wanted to say he didn't know, but that was too fake. Last time, she clearly had 2 little eunuchs take him to the Emperor's palace. "Should-o. If you know, then you know. If you don't know, then you don't know." "What do you mean by should?" The yellow-robed woman was very dissatisfied with his wording and coldly said, "Immediately take me to the Emperor's palace, and I won't pursue your previous rude behavior." Chapter 771. "My great aunt, you're trying to kill me." Song Qing-shu cried out in alarm. The yellow-robed woman raised her eyebrows and said, "What great aunt? It's so unpleasant." Song Qing-shu smiled bitterly and said, "Heroine, fairy sister, if I don't take you there, You will cut off my hands at most, and you will not unblock my acupuncture points at most. But if I take you to the Empress's bedchamber to assassinate her, it will be a crime of 9 generations. Song Qingshu was very satisfied with his performance. He felt that if he traveled back to his previous life, it would be easy for him to win the Best Actor award. You only need to take me to the Empress's bedchamber, and the rest has nothing to do with you. Who will know that you will take me there? Seeing that Song Qingshu still refused, the yellow-robed woman had to explain patiently. You can rest assured that I am definitely not going to assassinate her. Then what are you going to do? Song Qingshu asked tentatively. That's none of your business. Seeing that he kept making excuses, the yellow-robed woman became a little impatient. Are you going to take me there or not? If you take me there, you may not be in trouble. If you don't take me there, you will be in trouble immediately. You choose. Song Qingshu hesitated. Looking at Empress Pei Man's attitude toward Xiao Xingguo, she seemed to be planning something. He originally thought that he had no chance to take advantage of it. If he took the yellow-robed woman there at this time, it would definitely destroy her plan. But if he didn't take the yellow-robed woman there, he couldn't deal with it now. Okay, I will take the heroine there, but I hope the heroine will keep her promise. Song Qingshu showed a helpless look, but he finally agreed because he was also curious about why the yellow-robed woman was looking for Empress Pei Man. In this way, the yellow-robed woman held Song Qingshu hostage and walked all the way to the Empress's bedchamber. After tossing around in the laundry yard for most of the night, the sky was gradually turning white. Seeing this, the yellow-robed woman frowned slightly and stopped Song Qingshu. Instead of continuing to walk slowly, she reached out to grab his collar and began to take him back and forth in the imperial palace with lightness skills. Along the way, in addition to telling her the direction from time to time, Song Qingshu spent the rest of the time focusing on the fragrance on her body. Intentionally or unintentionally, he leaned against her to feel the soft and touching touch of her delicate body. After being bullied by her for so long, he had to collect some interest, right? Although the lady in yellow also noticed his action, because he was a eunuch, she did not think too much about it. She thought that he had never seen Qinggong before, and that right now she was afraid, which was why he was leaning so close to her. Thereupon she let him do as he pleased. What a pity. With Song Qingshu's guidance, she avoided the patrolling guards of the imperial palace and finally successfully entered the Empress bedchamber. Who knew that the Empress wasn't inside? Song Qingshu couldn't help but give a big sigh of relief. He liked this kind of happy ending the most. But he hadn't been happy for long when a sound came from outside the imperial palace. Hearing the movements of the eunuchs and maids, it seemed that the Empress had returned. The yellow-robed woman's gaze swept around the hall. She grabbed Song Qingshu and flew to a beam on the roof, using the shadow of the beam to hide the two of them. Now that you aren't flying, you should let go of your hand. The yellow-robed woman's gaze landed on Song Qingshu's hand that was wrapped around her waist. Her gaze instantly became unfriendly. Just now I was nervous and carelessly hugged you. Please forgive me, fairy. Song Qingshu embarrassedly let go of his hand. Shut up, someone has come in. Don't talk. The yellow-robed woman reached out to cover his mouth and focused all her attention on what was below. With her small hand covering his mouth, Song Qingshu's heart couldn't help but sway. That white and smooth skin, that soft feeling, made him sigh again and again. So playing dumb has this kind of benefit. Song Qingshu suddenly became mischievous and stuck out his tongue to lick her palm. The yellow-robed woman only felt her hand being touched by something warm and wet. She immediately pulled her hand back. Seeing Song Qingshu's cheap smile, she finally realized what it was. She couldn't help but be angry and shouted in a low voice, "What are you doing?" Song Qingshu chuckled and said, "I couldn't hold it in for a moment, so when the yellow-robed woman heard his nonsense and saw his expression, she couldn't help but become angry. However, the people outside had already come in, so it wasn't convenient for her to act up. She could only suppress her anger. Worried that the other would do something else, she casually sealed his acupuncture point to prevent him from moving. Song Qingshu was already prepared. He shifted his acupuncture point and dodged the ceiling. However, he still pretended that his acupuncture point had been sealed and looked towards the door of the hall. A group of eunuchs and palace maids were in front, clearing the way. Empress Payman was surrounded in the middle. In the middle, her phoenix-like eyes were filled with power. She was sexy with a hint of nobility, and her temperament was still so unique. However, Song Qingshu's gaze was more focused on the two little palace maids behind her. He hadn't seen them before when he came to the Empress Palace. It seemed that they were new palace maids. The reason these two palace maids attracted Song Qingshu's attention was because they were outrageously beautiful. The surrounding palace maids were like heaven and earth compared to them. There was also a faint worry hidden between their brows. They looked especially lovely and moving. That soft temperament was completely different from the passionate and unrestrained Lady Jinren. They looked more like daughters born by the rivers of Jiangnan. Song Qingshu suddenly felt the yellow-robed woman's body tremble. He couldn't help turning his head to look, and saw that she was staring fixedly at the two little palace maids with a deliberately suppressed excitement. Why is she having such a big reaction? Could it be that these two little palace maids are her long-lost daughters? Song Qingshu couldn't help but speculate maliciously. Of course, he quickly denied this speculation. After all, no matter how early the women of this world married, the age difference between mother and daughter would not be so small. Even though the yellow-robed woman was much older than the two little palace maids, she was not old enough to be their mother. Empress Payman walked straight to the phoenix couch and sat down. The two little palace maids shyly knelt in front of her. Empress Payman opened her mouth and was about to say something when a commotion came from outside the door. What is going on outside? Empress Payman's brow furrowed. Empress, it is His Highness Wei Wang. He insisted on barging in. A eunuch stammered. Dog servant, Ben Wang came in to pay respects to Empress. What is barging in? A young man wearing an official robe swaggered in. Hearing the eunuch's words, he kicked his but without another word. A trace of anger flashed across Empress Payman's face, but she quickly concealed it. She lightly waved her hand. Xiao Zhuozi misspoke. Come, take it off and open your mouth 20 times. On the beam, Song Qingshu's heart moved. It was clearly this Wei Wang who had been rude first. Payman, as the Empress, not only did not reprimand him, she punished her own subordinate. What was the background of this person that even the Empress was so afraid of him? End of this chapter. Chapter 772. Song Qingshu couldn't help but find it strange. Now that Shizong was weak, the power of the court was divided between the Empress and a few powerful officials. With Empress Payman's current status and power, there was no reason for her to be so afraid of a young man. Furthermore, she was the other's elder. It turned out that Shizong's health was not very good. He had been the emperor for so long and only had one son. Payman's son had been made the crown prince. Unfortunately, good times did not last long. The crown prince died not long after he was born. Since then, Payman had never had another son. Instead, another concubine in the inner palace had given birth to a prince for Shizong, who was now Wei Wang. Even though Wei Wang was not a legitimate son, he was Shizong's only son. Anyone with eyes could see that he would inherit the throne in the future. Wei Wang's mother and son were also clear about all this. Wei Wang's mother and son were more restrained, but Wei Wang was not so shrewd and showed everything in his heart. Payman had been humiliated by him many times, but she chose to avoid it each time. Of course, the reason for all this was unknown to Song Qingshu now. Only after he returned and investigated would he be able to understand the complicated relationships in the imperial palace. Your Highness is indeed fair in rewards and punishments. It's good enough that you didn't kill such a disrespectful servant. Wei Wang laughed. Empress Payman was secretly angry. She said coolly, "What is Wei Wang doing here so early in the morning?" "Oh," Wei Wang replied unconcernedly. "I'm here to pay my respects to your Highness." Wei Wang is considerate. Wei Wang clearly had no intention of paying his respects even now, but Empress Payman acted as though he had already paid his respects. Wei Wang smiled lightly. There was not a trace of respect in his expression. Suddenly, he stretched lazily as though he was tired from standing. Without greeting the Empress, he pulled a chair to the side and sat down. Then, he called for the palace maid to serve tea, as though he was in his own home. The palace maid glanced at the Empress. Seeing that the Empress was expressionless, she ran over to bring a cup of tea. Who knew that Wei Wang picked it up and swirled it in his mouth for a while before spitting it back into the cup. Empress Pei Man's eyelids twitched. Could it be that this superior West Lake Long Jing is not enough to enter Prince Wei's eyes? Wei Wang let out a weird laugh. The tea is good, but I have just experienced an assassination attempt with poison. I don't dare to eat this now. It's better to be careful. Pei Man suppressed her anger. From Prince Wei's words, could it be that I will poison you? I don't dare, but it's always good to be careful. After all, I'm the only son left in my father's family. King Wei pretended to apologize as he added another sentence. As expected, Pei Man's expression changed. Wei Wang's words struck a sore spot in her heart. If Wei Wang wasn't Shizong's only son, how could she allow him to be so arrogant? Thinking of her dead child, Empress Pei Man's complexion became even worse. Haha, since the greetings are over, this prince will take his leave first. Wei Wang also knew that this woman was powerful. He reckoned that it was enough for today, so he stood up and bade farewell. In the end, when he passed by the two little palace maids who were kneeling on the ground, he accidentally caught a glimpse of the appearance of the two women. His eyes instantly revealed a trace of amazement. He could not help but blurt out, "There are actually such stunning beauties in this world. And what's even rarer is a pair of sisters." Although the two women had their own characteristics, there were still some similarities between their eyebrows. The Prince of Wei had seen countless women. The relationship between the two girls is revealed. Before Empress Pei Man could say anything, Wei Wang spoke up. Empress Bin Wang's food just happens to have two maids who serve tea and water. Bin Wang thinks that these two little palace maids are not bad. Would Empress be willing to part with them? Empress Pei Man looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. Prince Wei can have any of my palace maids, but these two have special identities. Prince Wei should not have any ideas. Wei Wang first stilled, then sneered and said, "What identity can two little palace maids have? In this palace, other than Imperial Father, is there a woman with a more noble identity than this prince?" Seeing Empress Pei Man's expression change slightly, Wei Wang added with a smile, "Of course, Empress is not one of them." It would have been better if he did not add this. Once he explained, anyone with a discerning eye would know that he was targeting the Empress. Empress Pei Man's gaze froze, then she smiled and said, "Wei Wang, if you really want them, Bin Wang will not stop you. But don't blame Bin Wang for being blunt. You will not be able to bear the consequences. This woman really knows how to play tricks." Wei Wang sneered inwardly. "Not just two little palace maids, when I ascend the throne, according to the rules of the grasslands, other than my biological mother, won't all of Imperial Father's women be mine? At that time, you will just be a plaything under Bin Wang. Bin Wang would like to see what the consequences are." Wei Wang stood up and walked over to the two palace maids. "Since Her Highness does not mind, then Bin Wang will kindly accept them." Seeing Wei Wang approaching, the two kneeling maids seemed to be stunned. They looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Then they looked back at the Empress as if asking for help. Who knew that Pei Man was expressionless, as if she did not see what was happening in front of her. "Wei Wang, don't be rash, we are—" the slightly older of the two said in a panic. Who knew that halfway through, Wei Wang would flick his sleeve and cut her off. Bin Wang is not interested to hear who you are. Today, even if you're the seven fairies, you will have to return with Bin Wang. As he sneered, he reached out to grab the two maids' hands. The two palace maids exclaimed and instinctively wanted to dodge to the side. Who knew that after kneeling for so long, the moment they stood up, their legs would go numb and they immediately fell to the ground. Wei Wang laughed sinisterly and took the opportunity to grab the two maids' chests. His actions were extremely vulgar. Song Qingshu frowned and was hesitating if he should secretly teach this preposterous prince a lesson. But he was also worried that the yellow-shirt lady would see something. He looked back and was shocked to see that the yellow-shirt lady was biting her lips and trembling. Her fingers were clenched so tightly that they were turning white. Why is her reaction so big? Could it be that women are born to dislike such vulgar methods? Song Qing-shu was puzzled. Die pervert. Who knew that at this moment, the yellow-shirt lady would suddenly shout angrily and stab at Wei Wang with her sword? Damn! Song Qing-shu was instantly dumbfounded. Wasn't she here to find the Empress? Why did she run off to assassinate Wei Wang? She usually didn't look like such an impulsive person. The people below were clearly frightened by the sudden appearance of the yellow-shirt lady. A bunch of palace maids and eunuchs screamed and scattered to the side, leaving only Wei Wang in the middle of the arena. It was as if he was scared silly. Looking at the sword that was getting closer and closer, he couldn't even move a finger. Just as the yellow-shirt lady was about to stab Wei Wang, a shout suddenly came from the side. You're courting death. The bodyguard that had been following Wei Wang blocked the yellow-shirt lady's sword with a saber. The bodyguard protected Wei Wang behind him. He raised his saber and attacked the yellow-clothed woman's body. In a flash, the two of them exchanged more than 10 moves. Song Qing-shu was secretly shocked. This bodyguard looked very ordinary before, but he didn't expect him to be such a top expert. The yellow-shirt lady was actually gradually falling into a disadvantage. Even though she was injured, but looking at the bodyguard's cultivation, even if the yellow-shirt lady wasn't injured, she might not be able to gain any advantage. At this time, the bodyguards outside the hall also rushed in. First, they protected Empress Pei-man. Then, a portion of them secretly surrounded the two people fighting in the middle. Seeing that more and more bodyguards were surrounding her, the yellow-shirt lady was secretly anxious. She knew that the situation was becoming more and more disadvantageous for her. She wanted to leave, but the nameless bodyguard was very difficult to deal with. She tried to rush out several times, but was blocked by him. After a few rounds, she became more and more passive. Song Qing-shu hid on the beam and narrowed his eyes. Although he didn't understand why the yellow-shirt lady was so impulsive, he couldn't let her be captured by the Jin Kingdom's bodyguards. However, whether it was the nameless bodyguard or the yellow-shirt lady, they were both experts. If he interfered, it would be difficult for him to not be discovered. Seeing Wei Wang not far away from the two, Song Qing-shu had an idea. He flicked his finger and a wisp of sword chi shot towards Wei Wang. Ah! Wei Wang suddenly let out an earth-shattering scream. When the nameless bodyguard heard Wei Wang scream, he couldn't help but be shocked. He took the opportunity to look back and saw that Wei Wang was covering his ears. There was still blood seeping out from between his fingers. He didn't know where he was injured. How could he be in a mood to care about the yellow-shirt lady? He quickly flew to Wei Wang's side and asked, "Your Highness, are you all right?" How could the yellow-shirt lady let go of such a good opportunity? Her figure flashed, and she flew out of the hall. The other bodyguards couldn't stop her. The yellow-shirt lady jumped a few times and quickly disappeared into the distance. When she left, she looked back at the Empress' bedroom in confusion. Just now, there was clearly someone secretly helping her, but she didn't notice that there was someone else hiding in the hall. Could it be that the hidden expert's martial arts had reached such a high level? Or could it be someone from the Empress' side? In the hall, Wei Wang's wounds had already been bandaged. At this time, how could he still be in the mood to flirt with the two little palace maids? He sneered at the Empress and said, "Hee. Luckily, Imperial Father was worried that something would happen to this prince and assigned the shadow guard to this prince. Otherwise, I'm afraid that I wouldn't be able to step out of this room alive today." Empress Pei-man replied indifferently. From Wei Wang's words, could it be that you think that this assassin was sent by me? Whether it was or not, your Highness knows very well in your heart. Wei Wang sneered. If this Empress remembers correctly, that assassin just shouted die. Pervert, right? Thinking that the assassin was a woman, could it be that your Highness got into a romantic debt somewhere? Empress Pei-man's voice turned cold. Speaking of which, this Empress has yet to pursue the matter of your Highness provoking the assassin. You! Wei Wang suddenly stood up. The shadow guard behind him hurriedly stopped him and said in a low voice, "Your Highness, there was an assassin in the palace previously." This woman today seems to be similar to the description of the assassin a few days ago. Wei Wang frowned. All right, this prince will investigate this matter clearly today. Someone, bring the guard in front of the hall, Wanyan Tessie, to this prince. There was an assassin in the emperor's bedroom, and it even involved Wei Wang. Wanyan Tessie, who was in charge of the palace's defense, had already rushed over. Not long after, he ran in. This lowly servant, Wanyan Tessie, greets Your Highness the Empress and Your Highness the Prince of Wei. End of this chapter. Chapter 773. Song Qing looked down and saw that the person who came in had square eyes, a wide nose, and a fierce face. The most eye-catching thing was the long scar near his eye. This person was very famous in the capital, and even Song Qing had heard of some of his deeds. It was said that this scar was caused by an assassin when he was saving Jin Shizong. Wanyan Tessie, what are you doing as the inspector of the palace? The assassin has sneaked into the empress's bedroom and even tried to assassinate me. Wei Wang pointed at the scar on his face and roared at Wanyan Tessie. Wanyan Tessie hurriedly knelt on the ground, and cold sweat dripped down his face. Please forgive me, Your Highness Wei Wang. Please forgive me. This female assassin's martial arts are too high. Previously, we gathered the strength of many masters and even asked the chief steward to seriously injure her. We thought that she had taken advantage of the chaos to escape. Who knew that she would be so bold and still dare to stay in the palace? Forgive me. The king of Wei was enraged. You want to forgive me for such a big mistake, and that's it? If something happens to me today, how many lives do you have to compensate for it? Someone, flog Wanyan Tessie 80 times. Everyone looked at each other. If an ordinary person was flogged 80 times, he would probably go straight to hell. Even if Wanyan Tessie had martial arts, he would still be half dead after being flogged 80 times. More importantly, Wanyan Tessie was the inspector of the palace, the general of the palace guards, and in charge of the entire imperial army. His identity was not to be trifled with. How could he be flogged so easily? Wei Wang saw that no one moved after he gave the order, and couldn't help but sneer. What? Do you want to rebel? You don't even listen to my orders? At this point, Wanyan Tessie saw that there was no way to settle things peacefully. He had to bite the bullet and stand up. Please forgive me for being rude. My identity is special, and I am directly commanded by the emperor. I don't need to listen to other people's orders. I will definitely give Your Highness an explanation for today's matter. Now I have to go and catch the assassin. Please forgive me for not accompanying you. At this time, Wanyan Tessie was also angry in his heart. With his identity, everyone in the capital was polite to him. Today, he was actually humiliated by a brat who was still wet behind his ears. At the same time, he knew very well that he was the emperor's confidant. The Prince of Wei had tried to entice him several times, but he had never responded. Instead, he had become close to the emperor's younger brother, the Chongsheng prince, Wanyan Yuan. The Prince of Wei and the Chongsheng prince had never gotten along, so it was only natural that the Prince of Wei hated him. Now, the Prince of Wei was probably using this as an excuse to get rid of him. He could not be so foolish as to allow himself to be trampled upon. He had to deal with today's disaster first. When the news reached the emperor and the Chongsheng prince, they would naturally protect him. Seeing the conflict between Wanyan Tessie and Wei Wang, Pei Man, who was not far away, remained expressionless. However, the slight smile on her face betrayed her true feelings. Make a scene, the bigger the better. How dare you? Prince Wei took out something from his bosom and waved it in the air. Wanyan Tessie, don't you think that only Imperial Father can deal with you? Open your dog eyes and take a good look at what this is. It really blinds my dog eyes. Song Qingzong, who was on the beam, felt pain in his eyes from the dazzling golden token in his hand. When everyone saw the token in his hand clearly, their expressions all changed and they all knelt on the ground. Long live the emperor! Song Qing saw that even Empress Pei Man stood up and saluted. He couldn't help but be shocked. He carefully looked at the token in Wei Wang's hand. It was a palm-sized golden token with the words Regal Propria carved on it. There There are also a few small curvy words beside it. It should be the Jurchen language, but it was a pity that Song Qing couldn't read it. These Jurchen, they sure are quick to become Chinese. Even Regal Propria is here. Song Qing secretly ridiculed. Actually, he didn't understand. It was just a broken token. How could it be so powerful? If they really wanted to rebel, even if the emperor came personally, he would be killed. Seeing that even the empress was kneeling in front of him, Wei Wang's face was filled with pride. Guards, drag Wanyan Tessie away and give him a good beating. Yes. This time, none of the soldiers dared to refuse. They went forward to detain Wanyan Tessie. Wanyan Tessie's body is shook off the surrounding guards. Wanyan Tessie, could it be that you want to rebel? Wei Wang was furious. Song Qing, who was on the beam, secretly shook his head. He had already sensed that this Wei Wang was obviously not on good terms with Wanyan Tessie. He wanted to use this opportunity to mess with him. However, in Song Qing's eyes, this series of actions was just a child throwing a tantrum. It was really undignified. Other than letting him vent his anger, there was no benefit. Instead, he had completely offended a heavyweight like Wanyan Tessie. If it was a mature politician, he would either not do it or go to the extreme. Since he had the golden token in his hand, he could have taken advantage of Wanyan Tessie's resistance just now and directly pinned the crime of rebellion on him and killed him on the spot to prevent future troubles. In the end, Wei Wang could only flaunt his prowess here. It was really endless trouble. Wanyan Tessie's expression changed. Finally, he snorted. I don't need anyone to detain me. I can walk on my own. After saying that, he turned around and followed the law enforcement officers outside. After dealing with Wanyan Tessie, Wei Wang turned to Empress Pei Man and said coldly, "The guards outside Your Highness's bedroom didn't even know that an assassin had entered Your Highness's bedroom. These guards, under Your Highness, have neglected their duties and should be replaced." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around. "Guards, throw all the guards on duty in Hall of Peace and Harmony into the heavenly prison. Also replace all the palace maids and eunuchs in Hall of Peace and Harmony. I will personally choose who to replace them." Empress Peiman's expression changed slightly. "I'm used to having these personal servants around me. They're very familiar with my hobbies and habits and are very considerate in ordering them around. There is no need for Your Highness to worry about them." Wei Wang looked deeply at her and was silent for a while. Suddenly, he laughed out loud. "How can I refuse Your Highness's request?" Song Qing secretly thought that this Wei Wang wasn't an idiot. He used this as a pretext to change the guards in Hall of Peace and Harmony with his own people. And because there was an assassin in her palace, the Empress could only give in because she was in the wrong. From now on, Hall of Peace and Harmony could be said to be completely under Wei Wang's control. Every move of the Empress couldn't escape Wei Wang's discerning eyes. "I will go out to see how that servant Wanyan Tessie is doing. I will not disturb Your Highness's rest." Wei Wang could be said to have obtained a complete victory today. At this moment, he felt like he was floating as he walked. As for the two beautiful palace maids that he had taken a fancy to after today's disturbance by the assassin, he no longer had any interest in them. Anyway, Hall of Peace and Harmony was under his control. These two palace maids would be his sooner or later. He was not in a hurry. After Wei Wang left, Song Qing continued to hide on the beam for a while. He wanted to see if he could get any useful information from the Empress. In the end, Empress Pei Man did not show any emotion, perhaps because she was worried that Wei Wang's people were all around. Seeing that he couldn't hear anything valuable, Song Qing took advantage of the chaos in Hall of Peace and quietly left. After coming out of Hall of Peace and Harmony, Song Qing hesitated and decided to return to his residence in Xiaoxing Kingdom. As he expected, the yellow-robed woman finally returned here. Song Qing cursed in his heart. Did this woman really treat this place as her home? Fortunately, he was not a real little eunuch. Otherwise, if the fact that he was harboring an assassin was exposed, would the 9 generations of little eunuchs still exist? How did you come out? At this moment, the yellow-robed woman was half leaning on the bed. Her pretty face was pale. When she saw Song Qing return, she couldn't help but be shocked. "I say, heroine, aren't you too heartless?" Song Ching wanted to sit on the bed, but was glared at by her. He could only randomly pull a stool over. Fortunately, Hall of Peace and Harmony was extremely chaotic at that time, so I could take advantage of the chaos to sneak out. Otherwise, if they found out that I was the one who brought the assassin there, even 10 heads wouldn't be enough to chop off. The yellow-robed woman showed an apologetic expression. Actually, I was planning to wait for the limelight to pass before coming to save you. I didn't expect you to slip out by yourself. Yeah, I seem to remember that I sealed your acupoint. A suspicious expression immediately appeared on her face. Song Ching replied unhurriedly, I don't know what happened either. At that time, I suddenly felt numb at the back of my waist. Then, I found I could move my body. It seems that there was an expert hiding in the hall at that time. The yellow-robed woman had been suspicious before. Now that she heard his words, she was even more convinced. I don't know if he was an enemy or a friend. Song Ching laughed. I heard you say that it was fortunate that that person secretly saved you, that you were able to escape. That proves that person is definitely not an enemy. That's what I thought too. The yellow-robed woman nodded. I was still guessing if he was one of the Empress's people, but from the way he let you go, it shouldn't be. I say, heroine, you should worry more about yourself now. Your face is as white as if you've had your period for a month. If you don't take supplements, I'm afraid you'll die at any time. Song Ching had long noticed that she was seriously injured. She had just fought with the experts under Wei Wang's command. Even an Iron Man couldn't hold on. Shouldn't you be happy that I'm dead? At that time, no one will force you to do this and that. The yellow-robed woman had just said a few words when she couldn't help but cough again. Right, what is period? Period means that there's a wound on the body that won't stop bleeding. Song Ching didn't dare to explain in detail to her. He hurriedly changed the topic. Of course, I don't want to see anything happen to heroine. If heroine dies, no one will unseal the acupuncture points on my body. Won't I die with heroine? You little eunuch of guts. The yellow-robed woman scolded with a smile. Don't worry. When my injury is healed, I will unseal your acupuncture points. In the future, I won't force you to do anything. Everyone is a pitiful person. Song Ching heard this and secretly curled his lips. He thought, you're beautiful and your martial arts are high. You're pretending to be a pitiful person in front of a crippled and weak little eunuch. Tick-tock, huh? Song Ching looked behind her. What's that sound? Chapter 774. It turned out that although the yellow-robed woman had successfully rushed out of the encirclement and the chaos, the palace guards were not weak. Although their lightness skills could not catch up with her, they still had bows and crossbows in their hands. The yellow-robed woman's body technique was excellent, so she successfully avoided most of them, but she still could not avoid all of them. After returning to the residence of Xiok Singguo, the yellow-robed woman had planned to use her internal energy to force the arrowhead out. Unfortunately, she was seriously injured, and the genuine chi she could use was limited. Moreover, there were barbs on the arrowhead. Every time she tried to use her internal energy, the wound would hurt so much that she almost fainted. She did not dare to continue. Because the arrowhead was still in her body, it was difficult to stop the bleeding even if the acupoints were sealed. The blood flowed out along the wound and dripped onto the bed, making a dripping sound that Song Ching-shu could hear. Hearing the yellow-robed woman's words, Song Ching-shu had a strange expression on his face. I'm afraid that's not very good. Men and women should not touch each other. I'm worried that it will affect your reputation. What do you mean by men and women should not touch each other? You are obviously a... The yellow-robed woman almost fainted with anger. She had finally summoned the courage to ask him for help, but she did not expect this response. If a man were here, he would definitely not refuse like him. Of course, if it were a man, she would rather die than let him help. Since you don't mind, then I will help you. Song Ching-shu added, let me say this in advance. This is your own request. You are not allowed to settle accounts with me in the future. The yellow-robed woman only thought that he was afraid of being killed. She was angry and amused. Don't worry, I won't settle accounts with you in the future. Turn around and let me have a look. As Song Ching-shu ordered, he took care of water and gauze. At the same time, He sighed in his heart. He had been in this martial arts world for a long time, and he often encountered such situations. Practice makes perfect, and he almost became a surgeon. The yellow-robed woman slowly turned around. Her lips were tightly pursed, and it was obvious that she had endured great pain. Song Qingshu looked at her back and saw that the wound was near the junction of her shoulder blade and ribs. The arrow had been broken by her, leaving only a small part of the arrowhead in her flesh. The clothes near the wound were soaked in blood and stuck tightly to her body. Song Qingshu did not say anything and directly tore the clothes on her back. The yellow-robed woman seemed to be scalded by boiling water and instantly pulled the quilt next to her to cover her back. She got up and looked at him in shock and anger. "What are you doing?" She was already injured, and such a large movement aggravated the arrow wound on her back. She couldn't help but let out a groan and almost fainted from the pain. Song Qingshu said helplessly, "Heroine, if I don't tear off the clothes on your back, how can I take out the arrowhead for you?" The yellow-robed woman's sharp eyes gradually softened, and a trace of red appeared on her pale face. "But is there a need to tear so much? I just casually tore it. It's obvious that the material of your clothes is not good." Seeing her murderous eyes, Song Qingshu hurriedly said, Okay, Miss Yang, you don't have to react so much. Anyway, I am a eunuch. Sometimes I really wonder if you are a eunuch." The yellow-robed woman looked at him with hatred. "If Miss Yang doesn't believe me, you can check it yourself." Song Qingshu replied with a smile, and at the same time, he intentionally or unintentionally lifted his leg. Bah, shameless. The yellow-robed woman had already experienced his shamelessness, so she was not as angry as before. "Heroine, you should continue to lie on the bed. If you don't take out the arrowhead, you won't have the strength to scold me when the blood drains." Song Qingshu reached out to help her. When his hand touched her shoulder, the yellow-robed woman stiffened and hurriedly said, "I can do it myself." After that, she struggled to lie down again and buried her head in the quilt. No one could see her expression. Song Qingshu lifted the quilt on her back and clearly felt the yellow-robed woman's whole body tremble again. Looking at the large, snow-white skin in front of him, he couldn't help but say, "Heroine, I saw your body. You won't kill me afterward, right? Shut up. Help me take out the arrowhead." The yellow-robed woman was so angry that she almost fainted. If it wasn't for the fact that she had no other choice, she really wanted to kill this damn eunuch with a sword. Okay, then you have to bear with it." Song Qingshu finally became serious. He first took the knife to the fire to warm it, and then carefully began to cut the wound on her back. The yellow-robed woman was in so much pain that cold sweat suddenly appeared on her face. She unconsciously grabbed the hand of Song Qingshu, who was next to her. Song Qingshu was startled at first, but he quickly understood that she was in too much pain. He let her grab his hand and continued to treat the wound while thinking, "Fortunately, I am not an ordinary person. Otherwise, if you grab my hand, how could I help you take out the arrowhead?" Looking at her enduring the pain, Song Qingshu couldn't help but feel a trace of pity in his heart. He gently patted the back of her hand to comfort her, who knew that the yellow-robed woman would subconsciously hold his hand. "Okay, the arrowhead is out." After an unknown amount of time, Song Qingshu finally let out a sigh of relief. In ancient times, Guan Yu scraped the bones to cure poison. Today, I see the female Guan Yu. It really is an eye-opener. "Bah, you are the female Guan Yu." The yellow-robed woman was so angry that she laughed. This little eunuch did not have the slightest bit of knowledge, but he insisted on pretending to be elegant and quoting from the classics. In the end, he became nondescript. Of course, the female hero is not Guan Yu. Guan Yu's face is not so white. Song Qingshu laughed. "But female hero, can you let go of my hand? I still have to apply medicine for you." Only then did the yellow-robed woman realize that she had been holding his hand. What made her blush even more was that their fingers were intertwined. She hurriedly shook his hand off. Song Qingshu smiled and did not mind. As he applied medicine for her, he teased, "Come to think of it, this is already the second time I have treated the young lady's injury. Female hero, although your martial arts are high, you still have to be careful. If you get injured a few more times, I may see your entire body." The yellow-robed woman raised her eyebrows, but she knew that while his words were not serious, he was still concerned about her. She did not get angry. She only coldly said, "My affairs do not need a little eunuch like you to worry about. Hey, what medicine did you apply for me?" She suddenly realized that the other did not use the Jinchuang medicine that she had provided. Song Qing-shu took the medicine bottle and shook it in front of her. "Of course it is good medicine. With this medicine, you will recover quickly. Also, after the wound heals, it will not leave a scar. Young lady, you are so beautiful. If there is a scar on your body, your future husband will probably die of heartache." Ah, what husband, what a mess. Although the yellow-robed woman was not polite with her words, it was a woman's nature to love beauty. She hesitated for a moment and let him use her medicine. "How can a little eunuch like you have such good medicine?" Song Qing-shu unhurriedly replied, "Did you forget that I am the emperor's favorite? This medicine was given to me by the imperial hospital." "So it is like that." The yellow-robed woman couldn't help but nod. "Miss, you should stay here and recuperate. I have to go back to the palace. In a bit, I will have the imperial kitchen prepare something to nourish the blood and bring it to the door. Miss, eat more." Song Qing-shu treated her wounds and stood to leave. Chapter 775. The yellow-robed woman stared straight at Song Qing-shu as if she was talking to herself. "During this time, I can see that your position in the palace is not low, and you're also a favorite of the Empress. If I did not appear, you would be living more leisurely in the palace. Not only do I often beat and scold you, I also poke at your weak point to threaten you. You should clearly hate me, so why do you help me again and again?" And the yellow-robed woman looked at him and added, "And I don't see any resentment in your eyes. You seem to sincerely want to help me. Heroine is so beautiful. Everyone loves beauty. When I see you, I feel close to you from the bottom of my heart, so I can't help but want to help you." Song Qing-shu responded, "If other men answered like this, I might believe it, but you are—" The yellow-robed woman bit her lip and changed her words. "But you are a servant in the palace. There are 3 palaces, 6 courtyards, and 72 concubines. Who knows how many beautiful women there are? You have been influenced and seen many. Why would you help me just because I am beautiful? There are many beauties in the palace, but there really aren't any who are as beautiful as you." Song Qing-shu hastily interrupted her and replied seriously, "What do you mean by tragic? Is there anyone who praises someone like you?" The yellow-robed woman couldn't help but burst into laughter, revealing her sparkling teeth. For some reason, in the face of the praise and flattery of countless young men over the years, although she had responded with a smile, there wasn't even a ripple in her heart. During this time, she was often teased by this ordinary little eunuch until she trembled. Compared to the Jiangnan scholars who praised her, the words of this little eunuch could be said to be coarse, but she did not feel any disgust at all. Also, if she thought about it carefully, she found that his words were coarse but not coarse. There was even a feeling of vulgarity but elegance. How could the yellow-robed woman know that this was the common style of speech in the society of Song Qing-shu's previous life? That humor and ease was indeed not something that today's society, where etiquette ran rampant, could compare to. "I haven't studied much, so I misused idioms. Please don't laugh at me." Song Qing-shu didn't take it seriously and played the little eunuch's nervousness and embarrassment vividly. "I'm not making fun of you, and I think your description is very creative." The yellow-robed woman subconsciously comforted him. "But you still haven't told me the truth. Why did you help me? And I can feel from your eyes that you don't seem to be worried about the restriction on your body at all." Song Qing-shu thought to himself, "I can't tell you that I'm helping you because the Shaolin Temple owes you a favor last time, and because we're in the same camp." Seeing that the yellow-robed woman was staring at him, waiting for an answer, Song Qing-shu quickly made up a story without changing his expression. "I won't hide it from Miss. I'm actually a Han. When I was a child, I was caught and sent to the imperial palace to be a eunuch. I suffered all kinds of humiliation." Song Qing-shu cried for a while, and then he suddenly noticed that the yellow-robed woman's eyes were a bit red, and she had a distressed look on her face. He couldn't help but be shocked. He thought, "It can't be. This yellow-robed woman looks very clever. How could she be fooled like this?" He felt that the time was right, so he changed the topic. "That day, when I saw Miss come to the Imperial Palace alone to carry out an assassination, I admired Miss very much. In addition, because we are both Han people, I actually hoped that Miss would succeed in the assassination and bring honor to our Han people. I'm sorry, I've disappointed you." The yellow-robed woman's face was sad. Song Qingshu originally wanted to take the opportunity to find out why she came to the Jin Kingdom's Imperial Palace. He tried to find out why she came to the palace of the Jin Kingdom. Seeing that she didn't reveal anything, he didn't dare to continue asking. He didn't want to expose himself. "You know that I work in the palace of the Jin Kingdom. If my thoughts are heard by others, even 10 heads won't be enough for me to chop off. So I've been hiding my thoughts in my heart and didn't even dare to tell you." "I see." The yellow-robed woman nodded secretly and finally solved the doubts in her heart. "After interacting with you for the past few days, I know that you have a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Although you are a bit fierce, you will never make things difficult for a small person like me who is suffering. Therefore, I am not afraid of you." After explaining, Song Qingshu let out a long sigh of relief. He thought, "You don't believe the truth, but you believe the lie. You really can't blame society for being stupid. If you're willing, after I'm done here, I'll take you out of the Jin Kingdom's Imperial Palace and back to our own country." The yellow-robed woman felt that the more she talked with this eunuch, the more congenial she felt. She couldn't bear to see him continue to suffer here, so she blurted out. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly and said, "Miss, you know what can I do outside the Imperial Palace with an incomplete body? I can't let Miss support me for a lifetime. I'd better stay in the Imperial Palace." At the same time, he couldn't stop thinking, why did I pretend to be a eunuch? What bad luck. At worst, I'll support you for a lifetime. The yellow-robed woman felt that the words were ambiguous, until she remembered that the person in front of her was not a man, but a eunuch, so she didn't feel so embarrassed. "Support me for a lifetime?" Song Qingshu looked at her with a faint smile. "I hope Miss will remember this in the future. A gentleman keeps his word. Although I'm not a gentleman, I'm not a villain who breaks his promise." The yellow-robed woman didn't know that Song Qingshu's words had a double meaning, so she promised again without realizing it. "Let's talk about this after Miss completes her task." Song Qingshu suddenly thought of her attack in the Hall of Peaceful Harmony and couldn't help asking, "Does Miss Yang know the 2 little palace maids in the Empress's palace today?" "I do." A trace of sadness flashed through the yellow-robed woman's eyes, but she didn't intend to continue. Instead, she said, "It's not that I want to hide it, but the less you know about this, the safer you will be." After several attempts, he didn't get the results he wanted. Song Qingshu was a little frustrated, but he knew that this kind of thing couldn't be rushed. He had just opened her heart today, and after a while, she would find out sooner or later. After casually chatting with the yellow-robed woman for a while, seeing that she was tired, Song Qingshu got up and quietly slipped out of the Imperial Palace. When he returned to Tang Kuo's mansion, Wanya and Jebi seemed to be deliberately avoiding him, so Song Qingshu was naturally happy to have some peace. After returning to his bedroom, he was thinking about how to save the Song dynasty princesses in the laundry yard when a servant suddenly ran to him with an invitation. Song Qingshu opened it and found that it was Wanyan Liang, king of Hailing, who invited him to Xiaoxiang House tonight. Xiaoxiang House? I'm a Tiger Boho House. Song Qingshu secretly complained. This name didn't surprise him at first, so he asked a servant to ask about it. Sure enough, this Xiaoxiang House was the largest brothel in Daxing Mansion. It could also be regarded as the largest brothel in the entire Jin Kingdom. And it was different from ordinary brothels. It was said that the boss behind this brothel had an official background and was inextricably linked to the musical house. Brothel, I like it. Song Qingshu couldn't help but think of the scene when he met Xia Qingqing in a brothel in Yangzhou City. The corner of his mouth rose slightly. Song Qingshu was in his room thinking of a way to save the people of the laundry yard. Before he knew it, night had already fallen. He He sat in the carriage that Wan Yin Liang had sent to pick him up. Looking at the luxurious and exquisite decorations of the carriage, he couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Such an imposing and luxurious carriage. Wasn't it equivalent to a Rolls-Royce in my previous life? He couldn't help but miss his previous world. He missed the developed internet, missed the vast amount of entertainment and activities, and the long legs that filled the streets in summer. It was nothing like this world where all the women wrapped themselves up like rice dumplings. Song Qing-shu was lost in his thoughts when he suddenly felt a sense of danger. His entire body moved to the side, and a small golden snake had already bitten the seat he had just been sitting on. Seeing the sizzling sound of the seat being corroded by the venom, it was obvious how venomous the snake was. Suddenly, the angry roars of the bodyguards could be heard from outside. Immediately after, a petite and delicate figure rushed into the carriage. The dagger in her hand instantly stabbed towards Song Qing-shu. Song Qing-shu was hesitating whether or not to reveal his skills when the dagger suddenly stopped in midair. A surprised female voice sounded from inside the carriage. "You're not Wan Yin Liang?" Song Qing-shu looked up and saw that the assassin in front of him was completely wrapped up, revealing only a pair of intelligent eyes. From the delicate curves of her body and the youthfulness of her voice, he could tell that she was a young girl. Although he couldn't see her face clearly, based on Song Qing-shu's experience, with such beautiful eyes and eyebrows, as long as there were no major accidents, she was definitely a beauty. Moreover, she was the kind that could cause the downfall of a country. Realizing that Song Qing-shu wasn't Wan Yin Liang, the assassin didn't hesitate. She came quickly and left even faster. In an instant, she retreated back the way she came. Through the window, he could see that she had used several moves to force back the bodyguards who had surrounded her. Then, her body as light as a swallow, she disappeared into the eaves of a distant building. The bodyguards sent by Wan Yin Liang hurried over to apologize, but Song Qing-shu wasn't in the mood to pay attention to them. Instead, he looked thoughtfully in the direction that the assassin had disappeared. "It's really been a coincidence recently. I keep running into female assassins, and all of them are beautiful, Lord Son-in-law. How about we wait here for a moment? I've already sent someone to bring another carriage over. At the same time, I've also sent some people to protect Lord Son-in-law," the bodyguard hurriedly said. "There's no need. It's getting late. Let's go to Autumn Fragrance Brothel first." Song Qing-shu returned to the carriage. The poisonous snakes in the carriage had already been cleaned up by the bodyguards. But the assassin... The bodyguard hesitated. Song Qing-shu smiled. "The assassin's target was your master, the High Ling King. I was just caught in the crossfire. Don't worry, there won't be any more assassins." When Song Qing-shu arrived at Autumn Fragrance Brothel, Wan Yin Liang had already come out to greet him from afar. "Brother Tranquil, this king has already heard about what happened on the way here." It's all thanks to Brother Tranquil's quick reaction. If it were me, I'm afraid I would have died on the spot. Speaking of which, Brother Tranquil really did save this king's life. Your Highness is too polite. This time, I only managed to escape with my life because of a lucky coincidence. Song Qing-shu had originally suspected that Wan Yin Liang had deliberately put on a show. But from a look of fear on his face, it seemed that the assassin hadn't been sent by Wan Yin Liang. This king is truly sorry for causing Brother Tranquil such a fright. It just so happens that a top-grade courtesan has come to Autumn Fragrance Brothel today. This king will buy her and give her to Brother Tranquil as an apology. Wan Yin Liang pulled on Song Qing-shu's hand with a warm expression and walked inside. Chapter 776. Top Courtesan. Song Qing-shu had a strange look on his face. It seemed that he and courtesan were really fated to be together. As soon as they entered the Xiaoxiang house, Song Qing-shu smelled a refreshing fragrance of cosmetics. It was as if he was in the middle of a cosmetics counter in a shopping mall in his previous life. Along the way, Song Qing-shu was amazed by the magnificence of the brothel. No wonder it was called the #1 brothel in the Jin Kingdom. Its layout and style were even better than those famous entertainment clubs in his previous life. I wonder how he Iron Fist, S brothel is doing. Song Qing looked worried. It was okay in the Qing kingdom. With his preferential policies and secret support, there was not much problem. However, in other countries, the prospect of competing with a brothel of this level was not optimistic. This autumn fragrance brothel was a little different from ordinary brothels. In the middle was a wide platform, and a large number of seats were scattered in a fan shape around the platform. There were also a few floors upstairs. Song Qing casually swept a few glances and saw that these rooms upstairs were all private rooms. They should be provided to guests with prominent identities or wealthy families. The layout of the entire brothel was a little like a miniature version of the Roman Colosseum. Wang Yinliang led him upstairs and finally entered a private room on the top floor. Song Qing nodded to himself. With Wang Yinliang's influence in the Jin kingdom, of course he would choose the best seats. There was someone else in the private room. Song Qing eyes were sharp, and he saw a one-armed man with an unkempt beard sitting alone in a corner, drinking. Who else could it be but Yanghua? He seemed to be indifferent to everything. Even when Wang Yinliang and Song Qing walked in, he did not even bat an eye. F***CK. Seeing Yanghua will ruin your whole life. This saying is not for nothing. He is so handsome even when he is depressed. That unshaven beard and that melancholy look in his eyes. If he were in my previous world, I don't know how many love-struck girls would rush to sleep with him. Even though Song Qing appearance was once a famous handsome man in the martial arts world, he had to admit that purely in terms of appearance, he really couldn't compare to Yanghua. However, he had long passed the age of competing in appearance, so he didn't have any negative emotions because of this. Please forgive me, Brother Tranquil. Brother Bingda has recently learned about his parentage, and he's having a hard time accepting it. If he has offended you in any way, I apologize on his behalf. Before Wang Yinliang could finish, Yang was suddenly raised his head. His sleepy eyes suddenly became sharp. My name is Yanghua. Yanghua was like that in the past, and will always be like that. Wang Yinliang smiled bitterly. Brother Bingda, I know it's hard for you to accept this, but it's the truth. Song Qing could understand Yang' current mood very well, so he took this chance to interrupt him. Your Highness, in any case, a name is just a title. Since Brother Yang can't accept it right now, let's just call him Yanghua in private. After Song Qing finished speaking, he walked in front of Yanghua and smiled. Brother Yang, it's been a long time since we last met at Kaifeng. We just met at the city gate a few days ago. Although Yang's voice was a little cold, when he heard Song Qing address him as Yanghua instead of Wang Yinbingda, his expression finally softened a little. It seems that Brother Tranquil and my brother Yang are indeed fated to meet. Brother Tranquil, you might not know this, but Brother Yang didn't want to come today, but when he heard that you were coming, he changed his mind and came, Wang Yinliang said with a smile. Oh, Song Qing looked at Yanghua in surprise, thinking that he and Yanghua had never interacted before, so why would he treat him so differently? Unfortunately, Yanghua continued to drink his wine in silence, showing no intention of explaining. Song Qing smiled bitterly and turned around, only to find that there was another person on the other side of the room. This person's face was like jade, and although his looks weren't as heaven-defying as Yang's, he was still a handsome man. His beard added a bit of mature charm to his appearance. Allow me to introduce you to Brother Tranquil. This is the newly appointed Assistant Minister of War, Lord Xiaoyu. Lord Xiao, this is the current Prince Consort, Commandant of the Left Minister, Tang Quobian. Wang Yinliang took their hands and introduced them to each other. I've long heard of the Imperial Prince Consort's name, and now that I've seen you today, you really are extraordinary. Xiaoyu smiled and bowed. Lord Zhao's surname is Xiao. Song Qing looked at him thoughtfully. It should be known that the surname Xiao was rarely seen among virtuous Taoists. Imperial Prince Consort is indeed wise. To tell you the truth, I'm actually from the Liao dynasty and can barely be considered part of the Empress's family. Xiaoyu said without a trace of displeasure. Liao dynasty? Or the Empress's family? Song Qing was secretly shocked. The power of the Liao dynasty was firmly controlled by the Yalu clan of the imperial family, in the Shao clan of the Empress's family. This person's surname was Shao, and he was also part of the Empress's family. His status in the Liao dynasty could be considered noble, so why was he an official of the Jin Kingdom? After all, the Jin Kingdom and the Liao dynasty hated each other deeply. As if he had guessed his doubts, Wanyan Liang explained, when the Jin Kingdom conquered the Liao dynasty, they captured many members of the Liao imperial family and Empress's family. Some of them were willing to pledge their loyalty to the Jin Kingdom, and the Jin Kingdom was generous enough to appoint many of them to official positions. So it's the Liao dynasty. Song Qingshu secretly felt ashamed. Although Wanyan Liang did not say what happened to those who were unwilling to pledge their loyalty, it was not difficult to guess their tragic fate. He wondered if Shao Feng, Yilu Nanxian, and the others would punish this Lord Shao when they saw him. After chatting casually for a while, they sat down. Wanyan Liang naturally sat at the head of the table, and Song Qingshu sat next to him, which was enough to show how much Wanyan Liang valued him. Xiao Yu's seat was slightly further back, as if he was Wanyan Liang's attendant. As for Yang Guo, he was not interested in sitting with them at all. He hid in a corner and drank his wine. No one knew what he was thinking. After sitting down, Song Qingshu looked around and did not see any trace of Ouyang Feng and the others. He could not help but ask, "Why don't I see Mr. Ouyang and the others?" Wanyan Liang laughed and winked ambiguously. "Thank you for your concern, Brother Tang Kuo, but today's occasion is not suitable to bring them along." Song Qingshu was slightly startled, but he quickly realized that Wanyan Liang was here to bid for the title of courtesan belle. There was only one courtesan belle, but there were 3 experts. When the time came, it would be a problem to decide who would get the title. Perhaps Ouyang Feng and the others did not value women that much, but the title of courtesan belle was a symbol of honor. Whoever Wanyan Liang gave her to would have a higher status. When the time came, even if the 3 experts did not like women, they would still have to fight for her. This was probably what Wanyan Liang was worried about, so he simply did not bring any of them. "Someone tried to assassinate Your Highness today." "Your Highness, don't you think this is a little too dangerous?" Song Qingshu could not help but ask. Wanyan Liang laughed and pointed at the 4 burly men hiding in the corner. With a proud expression, he said, "Brother Tang Kuo, please take a look. These 2 are the top experts of the Tu Dan family, Tu Dan Ali Chuhu and Tu Dan Jun. These 2 are the Khitan experts recommended by Assistant Minister Shao, Yilu Yuani, and Shao Tonggu Dai. The 4 of them are the experts among the experts. Individually, they may be slightly weaker than Mr. Ouyang, but when the 4 of them join forces, whether it is Mr. Ouyang or Mr. Morong, they will die without a doubt. How can there be so many experts in this world?" Yang Guo, who had been silent all this time, suddenly laughed coldly, his words and expression filled with disdain. Chapter 777. Although he didn't understand why his adoptive father Ouyang Feng's attitude was so cold and warm, Ouyang Feng was his adoptive father after all. Since Yang Guo had received Wanyan Liang's courteous treatment, he couldn't take it out on him. He could only vent his anger on Wanyan Liang's subordinates. The 4 experts snorted coldly. Seeing that Wanyan Liang had no intention of stopping them and was instead looking at them with interest, they understood what was going on. They, the native experts of the Jin Kingdom, were already dissatisfied with Wanyan Liang's courteous treatment of Ouyang Feng and the other foreign experts. They had long wanted to compete with Wanyan Liang. Seeing that their master had acquiesced, the 4 of them acted as if they had a tacit understanding. Yang Guo didn't think that the 4 of them would have such a tacit understanding. He hastily used a single palm of block, but it was a pity that he was missing an arm. Facing 8 attacks at the same time, it was hard to avoid. In addition, the private room was small. There was almost no space to move or dodge. In less than 10 moves, the 4 experts saw an opportunity. 2 of them together blocked Yang Guo's only remaining hand. The other 2 instantly appeared on the other side. One of them pressed down on Yang Guo's back. The other grabbed his throat. If they released their strength, Yang Guo would most likely die on the spot. "Stop," Wanyan Liang called out. "It's too much for you to fight 4 against 1. Hurry up and come back. Even 4 against 1 may not win. Yang's face flushed red. He had always been arrogant. He had underestimated his enemies, and the 4 of them took advantage of him. He was shocked and angry. His internal energy surged out like a tidal wave. The 4 experts that were holding him felt a huge force pass through their palms. They could no longer hold onto his vital points. They all retreated a few steps, their faces full of caution as they looked at Yanghua. Yanghua didn't continue to attack. Instead, he stood up and walked out. "Thank you for your hospitality, King Hailing. I'm not used to this kind of environment, so I will take my leave first." Wanyan Liang smiled bitterly. "It's all this prince's fault. These guards are too blind and have disturbed Brother Yang's mood." Yanghua shook his head. "The Si Ling King's words seem to be looking down on me too much. A win is a win, a loss is a loss. The 4 of them have extremely high martial arts, and they also specialize in joint attacks, so my loss is an injustice. I'm not angry because of this. The reason I came to the Autumn Fragrance Inn was to see Brother Tranquil and ask him a question before leaving." "What would Brother Yang like to know?" Song Qing's heart skipped a beat. Tang Quobian and Yanghua were not acquainted, so why would he come see him? Could it be that he had discovered some flaw? Brother Tang Qua. Yanghua glanced at the others in the room and hesitated. "Brother Tang Qua, can I have a word with you?" "All right, if that's the case, I'll send you out." Song Qing was also curious about what Yanghua wanted to ask, so he said something to Wan Yinliang and left the room with Yanghua. Along the way, Yanghua seemed to be hesitating about something. His lips moved a few times, but he didn't say anything. Song Qing became even more curious. "Brother Yang, if there's anything you need, just say it. If there's anything I can do to help, I won't hesitate." A blushing expression suddenly appeared on Yanghwa's unkempt face as he stammered. "Actually, I wanted to ask Brother Tang Qua, who was the woman beside Brother Tang Qua when we met near the city gate." Song Qing was speechless. He didn't expect Yanghua to be so hesitant just to ask about this. "Her name is Wanyan Ping, my wife's younger sister. She's the current princess of the Qi Kingdom," Song Qing answered. "May I know why you're asking about her, Brother Yang?" "Brother Tang Qua, please don't misunderstand. I just... Yanghua clenched his teeth and explained, "It's just that I noticed that her eyes are very similar to my aunt's. I couldn't sleep after I got home, so I couldn't help but come to ask about her." Song Qing had a strange expression on his face. Since he couldn't find Xiao Long Nu, was he planning to use Wan Yin Ping to quench his thirst? "Brother Yang, there's something I'm not sure if I should say. Although Wan Yin Ping is my sister-in-law, we're already in love with each other, so..." Song Qing felt that it was better to make things clear. Although he believed in Wan Yin Ping's character, it was not wise to allow such a handsome man to wander around his woman. In the demigods and semi-devils, Murong Fu had allowed Duan Yu to wander around Wang Yuyin because he wanted to pretend to be magnanimous. In the end, Duan Yu was poached by Murong Fu. Yanghua hurriedly waved his hand. "Brother Tang Qua, you've misunderstood me. I'm wholeheartedly devoted to my aunt. I would never have any designs on other women." Having watched the return of the Condor heroes in his past life, Song Qing naturally believed Yanghua's words. He couldn't help but laugh. "Brother Yang, please don't mind me. I was just saying." The two of them chatted casually for a while before Yanghua left with a heavy heart. Looking at his lonely back, Song Qing wondered where Xiao Long Nu had gone. At this moment, only Xiao Long Nu could comfort Yanghua. Wan Yin Ping's eyes were just like Xiao Long Nu's, but he was already at a loss for what to do. Indeed, Wan Yin Ping was the romantic type. While Song Qing was lost in thought, his nose suddenly smelled a faintly discernible fragrance in the air. This smell was a little strange, but also somewhat familiar. He dared to bet that he must have smelled this smell recently, but unfortunately, he couldn't remember where he smelled it for a while. "Get out of the way! Get out of the way!" Song Qing frowned when he saw several burly men shoving the people in front of the fragrant autumn restaurant. With his current identity, he did not need to hide from anyone except a few people in the Jin Kingdom. However, he was impersonating Tang Quobian after all, so he did not want to cause any trouble. He moved to the side and hid. "Young master, please." The voice of the big man aroused Song Qing's curiosity. He raised his head to see which young master was so arrogant in the capital. Unexpectedly, he was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. Behind the big man was a young man in a sapphire blue silk robe. He gently waved his folding fan, which couldn't hide his elegance. He was extraordinarily handsome, and his eyes were bright and full of expression. The handle of the folding fan in his hand was made of white jade. The hand holding the fan was as white as the handle. The surrounding people were talking about it. They had never seen such a handsome young master. Song Qing smiled bitterly. Of course, there had never been such a handsome young master, because he was a woman. The reason why Song Qing was so surprised was because he recognized that this young master was the yellow-robed woman dressed as a man. She's clearly injured, but she's still running around. She's really outrageous. Song Qing didn't know why he was so worried about her. Right now, he wanted to press the yellow-robed woman against the table and give her a good spanking. Song Qing hid in the crowd, so the yellow-robed woman didn't see him. After entering the autumn fragrance brothel, she went up and entered one of the private rooms on the top floor. She's a woman. What is she doing in a brothel? Song Qing remembered the location of her room. After hesitating for a while, he decided to go back to Wanyan Liang's room first. When Song Qing returned to the private room, he heard Xiao Yu praising Wanyan Liang's experts for being able to capture Yanghua in just a few moves. Seeing him enter, Wanyan Liang casually asked him what he thought of the battle. Your Highness's subordinates are indeed experts among experts. They really opened my eyes. Song Qing casually praised them, but he didn't tell the truth. The four experts' martial arts were indeed very high, but Yanghua wasn't weak either. If the environment was different, Yanghua wouldn't have given them the chance to get close to him. Moreover, he didn't have his black iron sword with him. Otherwise, he could have killed each of them with one strike. Of course, Song Qing had to admit that even if it was a top expert, meeting these four people for the first time, if they were caught off guard, they might fail miserably. While they were chatting in the private room, the people downstairs suddenly became lively. Wanyan Liang glanced downstairs and couldn't help but smile. The highlight of the night is about to begin. Xiao Yu, who was at the side, came over and winked at him. Lord Prince Consort, your luck with women is coming. What luck with women? Song Qing was startled. This year's courtesan belle of Autumn Fragrance Brothel is different from the rest. All the nobles in the capital are here for her. His Highness intends to bid for this courtesan belle and give it to you. If this isn't luck with women, then what is? Xiao Yu sighed. Courtesan belle? Song Qing also glanced at the center of the hall, but didn't see any traces of the courtesan belle. The staff were probably still decorating the hall. He couldn't help but ask curiously, what's the background of this courtesan belle? All the nobles in the capital have seen all kinds of beautiful women, so why are they all here for her? Brother Tang Qua has a beautiful wife at home, so you don't care about these rumors. It's normal that you don't know, Wanyan Liang said with a smile. This prince will first ask Brother Tang Qua a question. What kind of woman do you think is the most attractive? This. Song Qing didn't know what he was getting at, so he didn't rashly answer. Please enlighten me, Your Highness. I wouldn't dare to enlighten you. This prince is just casually sharing my own insights. Wanyan Liang laughed heartily. Most men admire women based on either their appearance or their figure. Those who have both are naturally of the highest quality. Then what do those unusual men admire about women? Song Qing took the opportunity to continue. Wanyan Liang took a sip of tea, then continued. There are others who aren't satisfied with admiring a woman's appearance. Compared to her appearance, they pay more attention to a woman's inner beauty. Of course, a woman who has both inner and outer beauty is considered to be of the highest quality. From His Highness's tone, it seems that you don't approve of both? Song Qing smiled. Of course. A smug look flashed across Wanyan Liang's face. When men reach a certain level, whether it's a woman with a beautiful figure or a beautiful woman with both looks and talent, they've played with countless times. Naturally, they won't care too much about it. What they value most is a woman's identity. Identity? Song Qing had a strange expression on his face. This Wanyan Liang could be considered to be like-minded in certain aspects. If they weren't destined to be enemies, it wouldn't be a bad idea to be friends. Chapter 778. Wan Yinliang slowly shared his experience with women. At the same time, a few women that fit his description appeared in his mind. Huang Rong was definitely one of them. Unfortunately, the trip to Kaifeng had accidentally let her fly away. Humph, when I conquer the Southern Song, I don't believe I can't get her. Tang Kuobian's wife, Wanyan Jebi, was attractive enough as the most beautiful woman in the Jin Kingdom. Plus, she was a princess and my cousin. Just thinking about it made my lower part explode. Humph, I'll pretend to be polite with Tang Kuobian first. When I succeed, I'll play with your wife. There's also the granddaughter of the previous dynasty's grand preceptor Zongpan, Wanyan Zhongjie. That old thing Wanyan Zongpan fought for power with imperial father and bullied us father and son. Now it's time for this prince to take revenge. It's a pity that old thing's son Wanyan Sigma in Sigma in. Female sign. Wanyan Ahu died early. Otherwise, this prince would have let him experience what it means to be unable to live or die. I've already tasted how it feels to be Zongpan's daughter-in-law. The former most beautiful woman in the Jin Kingdom really lived up to her name. Next, it's his granddaughter Zhongjie's turn. I didn't get to enjoy her mother's beauty at her peak. Fortunately, Zhongjie inherited her mother's beauty and is even showing signs of surpassing her mother. It seems that God has been kind to me. Wan Yinliang was lost in thought for a while. Although Song Qingshu didn't know what he was thinking about, he saw his eyes full of hope and his suddenly rapid breathing. Obviously, he wasn't thinking about anything trivial. Song Qingshu deliberately coughed a few times and said, "Your Highness, are you saying that this top courtesan's identity is different from others?" Wan Yinliang finally came to his senses. He looked at his wife in his mind and laughed. If she's just an ordinary top courtesan, how can she attract the attention of all the nobles in the capital? You should know that the Jin Kingdom conquered Dongjing, the capital of the Kingdom of Song, right? Wan Yinliang suddenly smiled mysteriously. Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. He pretended to be enlightened. Could it be the captured princesses of the Kingdom of Song? He had been worrying about not being able to find an opportunity to save those pitiful women in the laundry yard, and today he had encountered something like this. "Brother Tang Kua, you're really smart," said Wan Yinliang. The imperial concubines and women of the Song dynasty who were captured were divided up by the people of the previous dynasty. Of course, we won't get a share. However, the former emperor left the group of princesses in the palace. I think they were placed in a place called the laundry brothel. It's coming. Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. He held his breath and listened intently. When those princesses were captured, the oldest one was only in her early 20s. Many of them were still in swaddling clothes, and the youngest one was still in the womb of the concubines. After all these years, the oldest one is only in her 40s, and the youngest one is just at the age of plucking. Song Qingshu asked without batting an eyelid, "Could it be that the top courtesan tonight is a little princess?" "You wish." Wan Yinliang laughed and scolded him. "Those little princesses are of course for the emperor to enjoy. How could he let these people take advantage of them?" Song Qingshu laughed awkwardly. "These women are of noble and special status. How could the emperor bear to let them go to the brothel? Noble my ass. They're just high-class prostitutes, high-class prisoners." Wan Yinliang curled his lips in disdain. "As for why the emperor let them go, I heard that it's because the Song Kingdom and the emperor haven't been on good terms recently. The emperor wants to use this to humiliate the Song people. Think about it. The Song dynasty's noble princesses have been reduced to the lowest class prostitutes in the Jin Kingdom. What face do the Song people have? Since it's to deal a blow to the Song people, the identity of a princess is enough. It seems that the courtesan bell competition this time won't be very good." Song Qingshu pretended to show a disappointed expression to get more information from him. "Don't worry. Why would I use an old and frail woman to fool you?" Wan Yinliang fell into his trap. He said anxiously, "Look at all the men in this building. They're not idiots. If they didn't know that the courtesan is a peerless beauty, why would they be so excited?" "A peerless beauty?" Song Qingshu smiled, but didn't take it to heart. No matter how beautiful a woman was, after all these years of suffering, how beautiful could she be? Wanyan Liang continued. This year's courtesan is quite special, even among the princesses. Do you know Kai Jing? Kai Jing, that treacherous official from the Song dynasty? Song Qingshu asked uncertainly. That's right, Wanyan Liang nodded. Kai Jing's power was so awe-inspiring that the Song emperor betrothed the most beautiful of his daughters, the fifth princess, to his youngest son. Who would have thought that not long after the wedding, the city of Tokyo would be surrounded by my second uncle Wanyan Zonwang's army? In order to make peace, the emperor of the Song dynasty did not hesitate to pay a large sum of money to get us to retreat. Second uncle opened his mouth and demanded an astronomical figure, 1 million ingots of gold and 5 million ingots of silver. The emperor of the Song dynasty could not even scrape off 3 feet of land to pay for the losses. So, he proposed to use women as collateral. The princess and the princess consort were allowed 1,000 ingots of gold each, 500 ingots of gold each, 200 ingots of gold each, 500 ingots of silver each, 200 ingots of silver each, and 100 ingots of silver each. Second uncle could choose any woman in the city of Tokyo. Can you guess who the first woman he chose was? Wanyan Liang recounted the past with pride, as if he wished he could imitate this kind of awe-inspiring behavior. Song Qingshu, on the other hand, was filled with righteous indignation. First, he was angry at the cruelty of the Jin people. Second, he was angry at the weakness and shamelessness of the Song emperor. Third, he pitied the women who had been betrayed. Back then, these high and mighty women had fallen from heaven to hell in one night. What a cruel joke fate had played on them. Could it be the fifth princess? At this point, Song Qingshu could naturally guess who Wanyan Zonwang had chosen. That's right. The fifth princess was famous for her beauty. Second uncle had admired her for a long time and chose her first without hesitation. Compared to Song Qingshu, Wanyan Liang's expression was much more relaxed at this moment. Back then, she was the most beautiful princess of the Song dynasty and the daughter-in-law of Kai Jing. Later, she was a concubine of the prince for a period of time. After second uncle died, she was accepted into the laundry brothel. I heard that she was once favored by the emperor. This identity is attractive enough, right? Wanyan Liang moved closer with a wretched expression and whispered, "When the time comes, when you look at the sweet and lovely baby under you and think of her previous identities, won't you feel a sense of conquest?" Chapter 779. That's right, Song Qing agreed. Song Qing casually chimed in. He was clear about the customs of the Jurchen people. Unlike the Han people, they did not attach much importance to chastity. Therefore, the experience of the fifth princess, who had been in the hands of several men, did not make them feel that it was a bad thing. Instead, it made it more attractive. Song Qing came from a later era, so he was more open-minded than the people of the Song dynasty, so he did not think much of it. Wanyan Liang was very satisfied with his reaction. To tell you the truth, I've been admiring the fifth princess for a long time, but I value heroes more than beauties, so I've decided to give her to Brother Tranquil. Besides, Brother Tranquil has suffered an unexpected disaster because of me, and you've also taught me to be on guard against assassins in the future, so I have to thank you even more. Song Qing smiled bitterly. Your Highness, how can a gentleman take away someone else's favor? Furthermore, I didn't help much this time. R at plus or minus. And / why not? You let me know about the assassin's methods in advance, which is equivalent to saving my life. How can I not repay you for saving my life? Brother Tang Kwa has been unwilling to accept it. Could it be that you think this gift is too little? Wanyan Liang deliberately said. Your Highness must be joking. In that case, I will accept it. Thank you, Your Highness, for your generous gift. Song Qing actually wanted to get in touch with the fifth princess to understand the situation of her sisters in the laundry yard. Brother Tranquil, it's too early to thank me. Although I'm determined to have the fifth princess, There's no guarantee that some troublemaker will suddenly appear to compete with me for her. I hope Brother Tranquil won't blame me when the time comes, Wanyan Liang said with a smile. How could I be so ungrateful? Your Highness is worrying too much. Song Qing felt strange. Wanyan Liang had first promised something that did not belong to him, and then failed to keep his promise. Wouldn't he have offended someone else? Wanyan Liang was a scheming man, so he should not have made such a low-level mistake. Noticing the change in Song Qing's expression, Wanyan Liang laughed and said, Brother Tranquil, don't worry too much. As long as nothing goes wrong, you'll be able to enjoy the beautiful fifth princess in a while. Of course, if something really goes wrong, Brother Tranquil will have to accompany me back to my residence. You can choose any of the women in my residence, except for the princess, as a token of my apology. Song Qing's heart skipped a beat. It should be known that the women in the prince's mansion weren't just maids and maids. He was a prince with real power, other than the official concubine, who knew how many other concubines and concubines he had. For what he said, if he wanted to, he could even sleep with his concubine. What a joke. Your Highness is too serious. As the saying goes, it's my fate if I get it, but it's my fortune if I lose it. How could I dare to ask for your Highness' apology? This matter cannot be brought up again. Song Qing refused in a serious manner. Wanyan Liang looked at him with a faint smile and said, Brother Tranquil, are you afraid to pick a woman for my mansion? Ha ha ha, I see you as friend. It's normal for friends to give concubines to each other. Don't take it to heart. This. Song Qing was about to refuse when Wanyan Liang casually waved his hand and pointed below. He said, The competition for the top courtesan has begun. A charming old brothel keeper walked up to the center of the platform and began to explain the things to take note of in this competition. She then boasted about the beauty of the top courtesan. At the same time, she introduced her special identity and experiences, which are similar to what Wanyan Liang had just mentioned. Song Qing didn't care about what the old brothel keeper said. Instead, he focused on Wanyan Liang's actions that night. No matter how he thought about it, Wanyan Liang's actions were too suspicious. Whether it was the rash promise he made or the sudden mention of giving concubines, everything was strange. His gaze swept across the surrounding boxes. Although he couldn't see clearly who was sitting inside, those who were able to come to this level were definitely wealthy and respectable. Although Wanyan Liang's power wasn't small, he had been in the capital for so long. Song Qing also knew that there were many people in the imperial court who were of a higher status than him. Why was he so sure that he would win the top courtesan? He was even willing to use his own concubines as compensation. Wasn't this risk too big? Suddenly, Song Qing's mind lit up, and he finally figured out the whole situation. Wanyan Liang wasn't so sure that he would win the top courtesan. On the contrary, he should have been sure that he wouldn't win the top courtesan. He was trying to find a reasonable reason to give concubines to him. In the eyes of modern people, giving one's own woman to another man was inconceivable. However, in this world, concubines didn't have any status other than the official wife. It was normal for them to be given away by their masters. For example, the great scholar Su Dompa. On the one hand, he was able to write a touching sentence like 10 years of life and death for his deceased wife. He looked like a great Casanova, but on the other hand, he was extremely heartless towards his concubines. He often gave them away, even when they were pregnant. Su Dompa was like this even though he was from the Song dynasty. Wanyan Liang was a Jurchen noble, so he couldn't possibly care less about his concubines. However, Wanyan Liang was different from Su Dompa. Wanyan Liang's status was much higher. Although he did not care about those women, to other people, those women could barely be considered princesses. With this status, they were more attractive than ordinary concubines. If an ordinary person saw that Wanyan Liang had bestowed a prince's woman to him, wouldn't they be moved to tears and become extremely loyal? Unfortunately, Song Qing wasn't an ordinary person. Of course, he wouldn't be bought over just because of this. Moreover, he suspected that Wanyan Liang didn't just want to use this opportunity to win him over. Perhaps he had another purpose. Although he didn't have any other evidence, Song Qing's intuition told him that Wan Yin Liang's ultimate goal might be Tang Quobian's wife. Goodbye. Song Qing still remembered that in his previous life, he had read a novel called Secrets of the Red Chamber. In it, the Prince of Beihai used a similar method. He first invited Jia Rong to the prince's mansion, then instructed his favorite concubine to seduce her. Afterwards, he turned on Jia Rong and took out evidence of Jia Rong's corruption to threaten and seduce her. Jia Rong was terrified and fell step by step into the enemy's trap. In the end, she had no choice but to offer her wife, Qin Keqing, to the Prince of Beihai for mercy. I didn't expect that kind of method to be of great help today. Hee. In the eyes of an experienced person, what kind of method has he not seen? Song Qing couldn't help but sigh. The intelligence of a pervert was indeed limitless. Although he didn't know what Wan Yin Liang's method was, he guessed that it wasn't much different from the Prince of Beihai's. Looking at the private rooms not far away, Song Qing even suspected that Wan Yin Liang wanted to use this competition to create a conflict between himself and some influential person. From then on, he would have no choice but to side with that person. I say, madam, what's the point of you bragging here? Why don't you invite the fifth princess out and let us see if she's really as beautiful as you say? The madam's complicated explanation had already caused many people to feel disgusted. Someone below could no longer hold back and shouted, immediately drawing a chorus of agreement. I know that all of you are waiting anxiously. I'll let the fifth princess out to meet everyone. After the madam finished speaking, she clapped her hands. After receiving her signal, the thick curtain on the second floor was pulled aside. Soon after, an elegant sound of a zither could be heard from inside. The group of men immediately craned their necks to look up to the second floor. They saw a beautiful figure sitting behind the beaded curtain, playing the zither. Immediately, exclamations rose one after another. She's indeed a peerless beauty. No wonder the second prince was so infatuated with her. Today, I must be your guest. Dream on. Don't you see how many princes are waiting upstairs? When will it be your turn? In any case, the rule tonight is that the highest bidder wins. I don't have anything else, but I have a lot of money. Song Qing's eyes were now very sharp. Although there was a beaded curtain between them, he could still clearly see the appearance of the top courtesan. She was about 27 or 28 years old. Even with Song Qing's picky eyes, he had to admit that she was indeed an outstanding beauty. Perhaps it was because of her noble birth, but despite the many years of suffering, she still had an innate arrogance that made her different from the other courtesans. Hearing the vulgar nouveau riche downstairs criticize her, her delicate eyebrows first furrowed, as if she was about to fly into a rage. However, very quickly, her expression turned into worry. Song Qing didn't know why he could think so much just by seeing her eyebrows move. But somehow, he had a feeling that he was right about her at this time. Indeed, I can't help but feel sorry for her. Wan Yinliang couldn't help but praise, Brother Tang Qua, are you satisfied with my gift? Song Qing had already roughly guessed his plan and agreed without batting an eyelid. It's indeed very beautiful. Seeing that everyone was amazed, the madam seized the opportunity and shouted, Gentlemen, I won't say anything else. The base price is 500 taels of gold. The one who offers the highest price will be the guest of the fifth princess of the Northern Song tonight. Song Qing noticed that when the madam spoke, the fifth princess lowered her head. She seemed to be expressionless, but under the table, she clenched her pale fists tightly, which betrayed her anger and helplessness at the moment. Let these people fight for a while. It's about time I'll come out. Obviously, Wan Yinliang didn't want to lower his status and compete with those people. At this time, the bidding came one after another, and soon the price exceeded 1,000 taels of gold. Song Qing secretly clicked his tongue. This is gold. I don't know how many top courtesans in the Qinhuai River can be bought with this price, but it can only buy her one night. And looking at the situation, the final price will be far more than that. This woman's identity as the princess of the Song dynasty is indeed extraordinary. When the price reached 3,000 gold taels, the voices of the people bidding suddenly decreased by half. After all, Spending so much money to enjoy a night was really too extravagant. Many people who didn't have enough money had already given up on the idea of bidding. Chapter 780. The people below looked at each other in dismay. This price had far exceeded their expectations. Moreover, they knew that they were only here to accompany the crown prince. They did not have any extravagant hopes of actually snatching this top courtesan. Part of the reason they had called out the price was to create a commotion, and the other part was because they had fantasies in their hearts. Now, this fatty had made them see reality. Is there no higher price than 5,000 taels of gold? After waiting for a while, seeing that no one else was bidding, the madam understood that the people below had reached their limit. Thus, intentionally or unintentionally, she turned her gaze to the private room upstairs. If no one else bids, this beauty will be mine. The fatty impatiently roared, as if he wanted to immediately run over and embrace the beauty behind the bead curtain. 6,000 taels. A cold voice came from a private room not far from Song Qing-shu. Song Qing-shu could immediately tell that this was the voice of the yellow-robed woman. So she's here for the Song Princess. Song Qing-shu nodded his head. Thinking of her identity as a Song Princess, it was not surprising that she wanted to save these pitiful princesses. Song Qing-shu suddenly had a thought. She has repeatedly barged into the imperial palace. Could it be that she is also here for the laundry brothel? 7,000 taels. The fatty saw that someone was competing with him and was instantly enraged. He immediately added another 1,000 taels. 8,000 taels. The yellow-robed woman's voice was still cold, but Song Qing-shu could almost feel the suppressed anger in her voice. 10,000 taels. The fatty directly called out 10,000 taels, declaring his determination to win. However, Song Qing-shu noticed that the fat on his face was unconsciously trembling. He guessed that the fatty was probably feeling the pain in his heart when he called out such a price. The yellow-robed woman's private room did not respond. Clearly, she had already given up on raising the price. Song Qing-shu smiled bitterly to himself. When I was treating her, she did not seem to have any money on her. Let alone 10,000 taels. She might not even have 100 taels of gold. I don't know how she managed to sneak into this private room on the top floor. Is there anyone else who wants to bid? If not, I'm going to hug the beauty. Seeing that he had beaten back the yellow-clothed woman, the fat man was secretly pleased with himself. He thought that the people in the private room on the top floor were nothing more than this. They made me so nervous just now. Aren't you being too stingy by increasing the price by 1,000 or so? How about this? I'll pay 20,000 taels. Someone in the private room on the top floor finally spoke up. Wang Yinliang glanced in that direction. Xiaoyu had already whispered into his ear, "It's someone from Tu Dan's clan." Wang Yinliang nodded, indicating that he understood. He then turned to Song Qing-shu and said, "Brother Tangqua, let's watch the show first." Song Qing-shu couldn't help but admire him secretly. This was the kind of bearing. In the movies in his previous life, they were all like this. No matter how much they danced, in the end, they were just stepping stones to show off. The people in the private rooms on the top floor finally began to compete. From Xiaoyu's words, Song Qing-shu knew that it was the son of a certain minister, or perhaps some marquis, who had made a bid. The bids became more and more outrageous. Not only were the ordinary merchants dumbfounded, but even Song Qing-shu was left speechless. Tens of thousands of taels of gold was enough to support an army of several thousand soldiers for nearly a month. But in the end, it was only enough for one night with this woman. TSK, TSK, TSK. The final prize fluctuated around 60,000 taels of gold. After all, although these nobles were rich, they weren't fools. For a night of pleasure, they were willing to fork out so much gold and silver. Anyone would have to weigh the pros and cons, seeing that the time was right. Wang Yinliang gave Xiaoyu a look. Xiaoyu smiled, stood up, and called out 100,000 taels. When this number was called out, the entire autumn fragrance brothel fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the private room they were in. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but smile bitterly. 100,000 taels. That person in the palace really knows how to do business. When I bought her from the Song dynasty, I only spent 1,000 taels of gold. Now, she's selling for 100,000 taels of gold. Your Imperial Majesty is wise. This move will not only humiliate the southern barbarians of the Song dynasty, but will also fill the national treasury. It's killing two birds with one stone. As officials, we naturally have to help your Imperial Majesty. Wan Yinliang gave him a meaningful look. Song Qingshu was dumbfounded. It sounded nice. Humiliating the Song dynasty? In reality, Shizong was secretly asking for bribes from these officials. This emperor was really... But looking at the situation, it seemed that only Wan Yinliang had seen through this. Not only did he express his goodwill to me, but he also secretly showed his filial piety to Shizong. No wonder Shizong trusted him so much. When the price of 100,000 taels of gold was called out, the private rooms on the top floor fell silent. If they were buying the rights to the courtesan, then 100,000 taels of gold wouldn't be enough to scare them. Although it was a bit expensive, they could still buy a princess to play with. But now, they could only buy her for one night. No one thought it was worth it. In addition, they had heard through various channels that the one who made the bid was the king of Hailing. No one wanted to offend such a powerful person for a woman. Thus, after dozens of breaths of silence, no one spoke again. Brother Tang Kwa, it looks like the beauty is yours tonight. Just as Wan Yinliang finished speaking, a voice came from another private room. 150,000 taels. Hiss, everyone gasped. Not only were they shocked by the high price, but they were also curious about who dared to compete with the king of Hailing for a woman. Wan Yinliang's eyes focused, and he turned to Xiao Yu. Xiao Yu shook his head, indicating that he didn't know who this person was. Wan Yinliang ordered his subordinate, "Go and check it out." During the whole process, Wan Yinliang didn't say a word. Song Qingshu wanted to see how he would respond, so he also didn't say anything. The atmosphere in the private room was a bit strange. Fortunately, the man came back quickly. "It's His Highness, King Wei." Wan Yinliang's expression became strange. After a long time, he turned to Song Qingshu and smiled bitterly. "Brother Tang Kwa, if it was anyone else, I would buy her back for you no matter how much money I have to spend. But it's King Wei, so I can't compete with him. You know that His Majesty only has one son, and he is destined to inherit the throne in the future. If I offend him now, I'm afraid I will die a horrible death. Of course, how can I put His Highness in danger?" Song Qingshu said hurriedly, but he was sneering inwardly. "I don't believe you didn't know that King Wei would come. Keep pretending." Wan Yinliang had an apologetic look on his face. "Today's matter was my fault. How about this? I will keep my word. Later, you will return to my palace with me. Tonight, you can spend the night with me. You can choose any of the women in my palace." Here comes the real show. Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. Just as he was about to refuse, another voice came from outside. 200,000 taels. Chapter 781. Song Qing was also very curious. He had already seen Wei Wang's domineering behavior at the Hall of Peaceful Harmony. He didn't care about the Empress at all and casually punished the Imperial Army's generals. He was really an extremely arrogant master. Even Wan Yinliang had to give way to him. Song Qing didn't know who dared to compete with him. "Go and investigate." Wan Yinliang stared at the private room and casually ordered. Soon, a subordinate ran out. I was wondering who it was. "So it's Changsheng Wang." Before the subordinate returned, Wei Wang stood at the window of the private room and had already called out the person's identity. He looked over and sneered. "Changsheng Wang." Song Qing's heart skipped a beat. He had been in the capital for a long time and naturally knew who Changsheng Wang was. Changsheng Wang, Wan Yin Yuan, was the younger brother of the current Emperor Shizong. At this point, there was no need to hide his identity. The window of Changsheng Wang's private room opened, and a man in his 30s could be seen sitting leisurely by the window. As he blew on the steam in his tea, he said calmly, "Your Highness Wei Wang, don't blame me for not reminding you. You should respectfully call me Imperial Uncle. Otherwise, people who don't know would think that the dignified Wei Wang doesn't even know these royal etiquettes." "You, Wei Wang flew into a rage. However, he also knew that he was in the wrong and couldn't refute in front of so many people. Changsheng Wang chuckled. He stood up and looked down at the courtesan below. What? Does Wei Wang also like this courtesan? So what if I do? Wei Wang snorted coldly. 15 taels of gold. That's a lot of money. Changsheng Wang suddenly changed the topic. But if I remember correctly, you don't have an official fief yet. Where did you get such a large sum of money? Wei Wang's expression changed drastically. Actually, with his status, it was easy for him to get money. However, this was an unspoken rule that couldn't be seen in the light of day. How could he say it in front of so many people? Prince Changsheng pressed on, and his eyes suddenly became sharp. Oh, I remember now. Your Highness, Prince of Wei, has been in charge of the flood control of the Yellow River recently. Could it be that those who repaired the river embankment asked you to do something for them and secretly offered you the money? Don't blame me for being too talkative. You're young and insensible. Perhaps you don't know what kind of money you should take and what kind of money you shouldn't take. Don't be fooled by those officials who are trying to curry favor with you. The river and the dikes are related to the lives of thousands of people. If something goes wrong, I'm afraid your Highness won't be able to bear the consequences. As soon as Changsheng King's words came out, the people below immediately burst into an uproar. Although they were afraid of Wei Wang's power and didn't dare to show too much, they whispered to each other and pointed at Wei Wang. Song Qing was puzzled. Changsheng King was so ruthless. Didn't it mean that both sides had completely fallen out? After all, Wei Wang was the future successor to the throne. Wasn't he being too rash? Xiaoyu moved closer to Wan Yanliang's ear and whispered. It seems that Wei Wang had completely angered Changsheng King when he beat Wanyan Tessie 80 times. Xiaoyu's voice was very soft, and it was so noisy in Qiusheng brothel that even Wan Yanliang wouldn't have heard it clearly if Xiaoyu hadn't whispered in his ear. However, with Song Qing's level of cultivation, he naturally heard it clearly. So Wanyan Tessie is Changsheng King's man. Knowing this, Song Qing suddenly understood. At the same time, he was secretly shocked. As a prince, Wanyan Yuan actually befriended a general who was in charge of the imperial army. No one would believe that he didn't have any ulterior motives. Thinking of the Jin Kingdom's tradition of elder brothers, Changsheng King probably also had thoughts of competing for the throne. No wonder he and Wei Wang were like fire and water and had openly fallen out. But what role did Wan Yanliang play in this? Xiaoyu's respectful attitude towards him didn't seem to be that of a normal superior and subordinate. Instead, it seemed like he was Wan Yanliang's retainer. It was really strange. Nonsense. I have always been honest and clean. Why would I accept bribes? Wei Wang's face turned red, and he braced himself to say this. He wanted to slap Changsheng King in the face, but he knew that this was just a thought. After all, Changsheng King's power was not inferior to his, and he was also his uncle. Oh, since your Highness is honest and clean, how can you take out 15 taels of gold? Changsheng King put on a look of sudden realization and said, I understand now. I'm afraid that your Highness is planning to use an exaggerated price to scare off the other competitors. Anyway, you are Wei Wang. Would Qiusheng brothel really be so ignorant as to take so much money from you? Wei Wang's face turned green and white. He waved his hand and said, You win. Let's go. Song Qing secretly admired Changsheng King's clever tactics. He was waiting for Wei Wang to jump into a trap, whether it was corruption or using his power to force Wei Wang to not pay. No matter which one Wei Wang admitted to, it would cause a lot of trouble, and he could only run away with his tail between his legs. 20 taels of gold. I'm afraid even Changsheng King can't take out that much. Song Qing suddenly wondered. He was now the head of the Tranquil family, one of the top 3 families in the Jin Kingdom. It was not easy for him to transfer so much money in a short period of time, and he had to be strictly examined by the elders. Even if Wanyan Yuan was a prince, he couldn't be any better. Xiaoyu laughed and said, Prince Consort, you may not know this. Although he called out such a high price, it doesn't mean that Changsheng King will pay so much money. As he said just now, Qiusheng brothel doesn't dare to take the full amount from Wei Wang, but will they dare to ask him for the full amount? At least they will take the initiative to give a 20% discount. And I'm afraid Changsheng King won't even pay 20%. Song Qing said curiously. Will he go back on his word? Xiao Yu chuckled sheepishly and couldn't help but glance at Wan Yinliang. Wan Yinliang smiled back and said, Brother Tanqua is a straightforward person, so it's normal that he doesn't know about this. We're all on the same side now, so there's nothing to hide. Xiao Yu, why don't you tell him? Xiao Yu then explained in detail. Of course, he won't go back on his word. Instead, he will choose another clever method. For example, instead of paying the full amount in one go, he will choose to pay the full amount in several installments. Will Qiuxiang Brothel dare to refuse? As time goes on, there will be more places to play tricks. If I'm not wrong, in the end, Qiuxiang Brothel will only receive the first payment. Song Qing couldn't help but click his tongue when he heard this. He came from the future. Although he had seen much more than the people in this world, when it came to how to use power, he still couldn't catch up with these aristocratic families. He was amazed by the way these people used. It was no wonder these people were willing to raise the price by 2 gold taels. Those ordinary rich merchants could only use real money to compete with them. Chapter 782. Wan Yinliang laughed. Brother Tanqua, you're too honest. The one in the palace doesn't always keep an eye on the treasury. The people below will naturally have their own ways to deal with these problems. Why do we have to worry about them? Song Qing sighed. In his previous life, he had heard a rumor that the emperor of the Qing dynasty had always treated eggs as a rare treasure. This was because the Ministry of Internal Affairs had told him that one egg cost dozens of taels of silver. Even the emperor felt the pinch when he ate it. He didn't know that eggs could be bought for just a few copper coins. At that time, Song Qing couldn't understand why the people of the Ministry of Internal Affairs would be so daring as to openly take the emperor's money. Tonight, he finally understood. Brother Tanqua, I'm sorry for what happened tonight. There's no point in staying here any longer. Come, let's go to my palace. I'll treat you to a drink. Wan Yinliang stood up and pulled Song Qing to his side. Our unspecified currency equals unspecified currency equals unspecified currency is identical to Your Highness, you're too kind. Song Qing hurriedly tried to find an excuse to refuse. Although he was tempted to play with His Highness's women, he knew that there was no free lunch in this world. He would have to pay a higher price. Could it be that Brother Tanqua is accompanied by the most beautiful woman in the Jin Kingdom every day? So you think that the women in my palace are all mediocre? Wan Yinliang's face darkened. Song Qing knew that Qin Yu wasn't truly angry and was only putting on an act. But now that things had come to this, he really didn't know how to refuse. If he refused again, wouldn't that be tacitly admitting that all the women in the King Hailing Palace were mediocre? As the saying goes, it's better to offend a gentleman than to offend a villain. Song Qing was at the critical moment of saving the people in the washing clothes yard. If Wan Yinliang played tricks behind his back, it would be troublesome. Just as Song Qing was having a headache, a hearty laugh came from outside the door. Hailing King, do you welcome me in? Changsheng King. Everyone in the room recognized his voice. Wan Yinliang glanced at Xiao Yu. Why is he looking for me? Xiao Yu shook his head. I'm not sure either. Let's wait and see. The two's whispers didn't escape Song Qing's ears. Song Qing pretended that he didn't know anything. Very soon, the ever-victorious king was welcomed in. When he saw Song Qing, he was startled. So the emperor's son-in-law is here too. Song Qing bowed. Greetings, Wang Ya. We're family. Don't be so polite. Changsheng King laughed out loud. Song Qing was startled at first, but he quickly reacted. Changsheng King was Gu Bai's brother, so he was actually his second brother-in-law. After they chatted for a while, Wan Yin Yuan suddenly said to Wan Yin Liang, Hailing King, you won't blame me for stealing your love today, right? Wan Yin Liang laughed and said, Changsheng Wang, you are exaggerating. Competing for the title of courtesan belle has always been a matter of elegance. How can there be such a thing as stealing someone's love? Hee hee, we grew up together. How can you hide your thoughts from me? Wan Yin Yuan laughed. Don't worry, I'm not interested in that top courtesan. I just can't stand that brat Dao Ji's arrogant and domineering manner. Wan Yin Liang didn't respond. He calmly replied, Wei Wang is young. It's normal for him to be a bit arrogant. Only then did Song Qing find out that Wei Wang's real name was Wanyan Daoji. His heart immediately thundered. Daoji, Daoji. Jigong's Buddhist name was Daoji, and Jigong was a person from the early Southern Song dynasty. At the same time, he claimed to be an official from a young age. Could this Wei Wang be the future Jigong? Song Qing felt like his brain wasn't enough to process all of this. This world was a bit too chaotic. You're too thoughtful. Hearing Wan Yin Liang's superficial diplomatic words, Wan Yin Yuan was a bit dissatisfied. I came all the way here to give you the title of courtesan belle. Give it to me. This time, it was Wan Yin Liang's turn to be surprised. Heh, you're pretending. Who doesn't know that you're a playboy? Wan Yin Yuan rolled his eyes at him. You also know that I'm not interested in women. Tao Yao is also very strict with me. If I really bring the title of courtesan belle back, she'll make a scene. Wan Yin Liang was startled. Sister-in-law has always been gentle and virtuous. She doesn't seem like the type to control you. Of course she's gentle in front of outsiders, but in front of me, she's a tigress. Wan Yin Yuan's face was gloomy. Listening to their conversation, Song Qing guessed that the Tao Yao they were talking about was the Changsheng Wang Fei. He couldn't help but feel curious. After being in Daxing Prefecture for so long, I've discovered that the names of these female enlightened masters are so strange that I can't bear to look at them. But this Changsheng Wang Fei's name isn't bad. It's comparable to my family's goodbye. I don't know if it's from the Book of Odes, but these female enlightened masters aren't very cultured. It's probably just a coincidence. Don't be ungrateful of your good fortune. Sister-in-law was a famous beauty in our circle. In the end, she chose you. Who knows how many people sighed with regret. Later, the emperor specially conferred her the title of Lady Peach Blossom. Who knows how many women were envious of her. Wan Yin Liang teased. He thought of the bright and beautiful young girl from back then. Although she was now someone's wife, she had become even more beautiful. His heartbeat suddenly sped up. Wan Yin Liang's physical reaction didn't escape Song Qing's ears. Song Qing glanced at him and thought to himself, this Wan Yin Liang is really a severe wife con. I thought I was already ridiculous enough, but I didn't expect that there would always be a higher mountain. Hearing the words, Lady Peach Blossom, Wan Yin Yuan's expression changed slightly, but he quickly concealed it. Unwilling to fall behind, he retorted, You speak as if Tu Danjing wasn't the common lover of our group. In the end, she still chose you. So the Princess of Hailing is called Tu Danjing. No wonder Wan Yin Liang has such a close relationship with the Tu Dan family. Song Qing glanced at the four experts beside Wan Yin Liang. Two of them were called Tu Dan Ali Chuhu and Tu Dan Jun. It seemed that the Tu Dan family had bet their entire family on the King of Hailing. This is different. Although there were many people who liked Tu Danjing back then, at least that person didn't like. Wan Yin Liang said meaningfully. Wan Yin Yuan's expression immediately became unsightly. Before the current Emperor Wan Yin, she ascended the throne, he was just like everyone else, an ordinary prince. It was an open secret in this circle that he liked Tao Yao. In the end, Tao Yao chose him. Originally, this wasn't a big deal, but who knew that after Emperor Taizong passed away, the various factions would compete and push Wan Yin Shi onto the throne. This past event couldn't help but make people's imaginations roam. In addition, he had later conferred the title of Lady Peach Blossom to Tao Yao. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Wan Yin, she still had feelings for Tao Yao. This made Wan Yin Yuan feel like he was sitting on pins and needles. Chapter 783. Wan Yin Yuan stood up abruptly with an ugly expression on his face. Wan Yin Liang, I came here out of goodwill to give you the title of top beauty. Are you going to mock me like this? Changxing Prince, you've really misunderstood me. Wan Yin Liang hurriedly apologized. It was my slip of the tongue just now. I'll punish myself by drinking 3 cups of wine as an apology. He picked up the wine jug beside him and poured 3 cups of wine. He drank them all in one gulp, and then pulled Wanyan Yuan back to his seat. Wanyan Yuan's expression softened a little. So, are you going to accept the title of top beauty or not? I'll accept it, all right? Wanyan Liang smiled bitterly. It's just that I don't know how to repay this generous gift of yours. You clearly know what I want. Why do you have to pretend to be ignorant? Wanyan Yuan couldn't help but snort. He was about to say something, but when he saw that Song Qingshu was still in the room, he immediately shut his mouth. Song Qingshu, who was standing to the side, immediately narrowed his eyes. What does Wanyan Yuan mean? Could it be? Wanyan Liang also glanced at Song Qingshu. He knew that Wanyan Yuan couldn't say some things in front of Song Qingshu. He rolled his eyes and came up with an idea. I have a presumptuous request here. I hope Changsheng Prince won't mind. What presumptuous request? Wanyan Yuan was immediately overjoyed. He wasn't afraid of what he wanted, but he was afraid that he didn't want anything. Wanyan Yuan pointed at Song Qingshu and smiled. Actually, I promised Brother Tang Kwa tonight that I would buy the title of top beauty and give it to him to thank him for saving my life. Wanyan Liang didn't mention what he had said earlier. He only mentioned that Song Qingshu had encountered the assassin and roughly told Wanyan Yuan about what had happened that night. I want to honor my promise and give the title of top beauty to Brother Tang Kwa. I wonder if Changsheng Prince would mind? Wanyan Liang stared at Wanyan Yuan and smiled. Wanyan Yuan was stunned. What happened to Wanyan Liang? How could he give away such a beauty so casually? Thinking about it for a moment, he thought that this man was deliberately sending Song Qingshu away so that they could speak. He was overjoyed. Since I've given you the top courtesan, you naturally have the right to decide what to do with her. Tang Kwa Bian is Song Bai's husband, and as her brother, I can't see my little sister being wronged. But today, for the sake of the Prince of Hailing's face, I'll turn a blind eye to this. Tang Kwa Bian, you brat, you better give me a few jugs of wine to seal my mouth, otherwise I'll tell Song Bai. Of course. Thank you, Si Ling King. Thank you, ever victorious King. Song Qingshu knew that the two of them wanted to send him away. In addition, he also wanted to find the 5th princess to inquire about the situation of the other princesses in the laundry yard. Therefore, he did not decline. Both parties could be said to have hit it off. Wanyan Liang winked at him. Brother Tang Kwa, the beauty is alone in her bed, so we won't hold you up any longer. Hurry up and go. Don't waste this beautiful scenery. Song Qingshu deliberately put on an awkward and expectant expression. After bidding farewell to the two of them, he pretended to be impatient and hurried away. Halfway through, he hesitated whether he should go back and eavesdrop on what the two of them were discussing. But then he thought of the tight security around the room, and the 4 experts under Wanyan Liang were not easy to deal with. Although he did not know how good Wanyan Yuan's men were, they must not be too bad. Going too close would easily expose him. Forget it. Even if I don't eavesdrop, I can roughly guess what they're talking about. I'd better take this opportunity to find the 5th princess and learn about the situation in the laundry yard. In the end, Song Qingshu gave up on the idea of eavesdropping. He quickened his pace and walked towards the room where the top courtesan was. Thinking of the excitement on Song Qingshu's face when he left, Wanyan Liang could not help but laugh. Brother Tang Kwa is really something. His wife is the most beautiful woman in the Jin Kingdom, but he can't control himself. Hey, I used to think that he was a loyal man, but I didn't expect him to be a womanizer. Wanyan Yuan snorted. If not for the fact that he wanted to send Song Qingshu away, he would have taught Song Qingshu a lesson for his sister's sake. Changsheng King, don't be angry. His lust may not be a bad thing for you. Wanyan Liang said meaningfully. At the same time, he added in his heart, it's even better for me. Now that I know that he is a womanizer, I can use a little trick to drive a wedge between them. It will be much easier to get goodbye. What do you mean? Hearing the hidden meaning in Wanyan Liang's words, Wanyan Yuan's heart skipped a beat. Ask yourself, is goodbye closer to you or to the emperor? Wanyan Liang asked. This, Wanyan Yuan subconsciously replied. Although goodbye is also my sister, she's closer to my brother. That's it then. If Tang Kwa's defense was impenetrable, he would naturally stand on His Majesty's side with goodbye. But now that you know his weakness, you have a chance to pull him to your side, Wang Yinliang explained. Wang Yinyuan's expression changed several times. Then he suddenly laughed. Hailing King, what are you saying? Isn't it the same whether he stands on the emperor's side or mine? Wang Yinliang couldn't help but snort. There are no outsiders here. If you don't want to be honest with me, then please leave. Wang Yinyuan struggled internally. Although he had prepared himself before coming, this matter was of great importance. Was Wang Yinliang trustworthy? Wang Yinliang knew that he was hesitating, so he deliberately sighed. As if talking to himself, he said, Changshan King, right now you are in a precarious situation. Hailing King, aren't you being too alarmist? In reality, Wang Yinyuan knew this better than anyone else. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come looking for Wang Yinliang. But of course, he couldn't show his fear. Wang Yinliang sneered and said, It is an open secret that the emperor liked Tao Yao. Later, he gave her the title of Lady Peach Blossom. His intentions were even more obvious. If it wasn't for the fact that he was worried about the reputation of stealing his sister-in-law, he would have already made a move against you. Which one of the officials in the court isn't an expert at figuring out the emperor's intentions? Right now, everyone is watching you. As long as there is a chance, they will make sure you are beyond redemption. At that time, the emperor will be able to obtain Tao Yao. Of course, it isn't difficult for you to protect yourself. Wang Yinliang changed the topic. Wang Yinyuan hurriedly asked, What do you have in mind? Wang Yinliang looked at him with a faint smile. Find a chance to ask Empress Dowager to let my sister-in-law stay in the palace for a few nights a month. That way, all the dangers will be solved. Bastard. Wang Yinyuan, am not the kind of person who would sacrifice his wife for glory. Wang Yinyuan slapped the table with such force that the table almost fell apart. Wang Yinliang said it tactfully. Serving the Empress Dowager was just a high-sounding excuse. Everyone knew what would happen if Tao Yao stayed in the imperial palace. The emperor saw that he was so tactful and had obtained Tao Yao without having to bear a bad reputation. Of course, he would not make things difficult for him. But what man could endure such a great humiliation? Chapter 784. Seeing Wang Yinyuan lose his composure, Wang Yinliang's eyes flashed with pride, but he quickly concealed it. He said hurriedly, Tao Yao, let's put this matter aside for now. Let's talk about your other crisis. What crisis? Wang Yinyuan's breathing quickened. His mind was in a mess, and he asked, Prince, Wei. Wang Yinliang said slowly. Wang Yinyuan's expression changed. Noticing the change in Wang Yinyuan's expression, Wang Yinliang continued, The emperor's crown prince died young, and he has no other sons. Thus, Prince Wei can be said to be the only heir to the throne. Unfortunately, as far as I know, your relationship with Prince Wei is not harmonious. Not only is it not harmonious, we're like fire and water. Wang Yinyuan smiled bitterly and said, I don't know what's going on. That guy has been targeting me for the past few years. I couldn't take it anymore, so I fought back. You've seen how our relationship has developed. That's why I said he's another crisis. Wang Yinliang sighed and said worriedly, Actually, the emperor's health isn't very good. If you're lucky enough, you might be able to survive until the emperor. I won't go into the details. Just know what I mean. Unfortunately, once the new emperor ascends the throne, you'll still die. Wang Yinyuan's expression changed several times. How could he not understand this? It was just that he had always been hoping for luck. Now that Wang Yinliang had exposed his fantasies, he finally realized how dangerous his situation was. Wang Yinyuan suddenly stood up and knelt down in front of Wang Yinliang. Please save me, big brother. Wang Yinliang was the eldest grandson of the first wife. Because his father was not a legitimate son, he did not inherit the throne. However, in terms of seniority, he was indeed Wang Yinyuan's older brother. Wang Yinliang pretended to be surprised and hurriedly went to help him up. Changsheng Prince, what are you doing? Get up quickly. If big brother doesn't save me, I won't be able to live anyway. I might as well kneel here and die. Wang Yinyuan's attitude was resolute as he looked at Changsheng Prince earnestly. "Aren't you making things difficult for me?" Wanyan Liang laughed bitterly. "If Big Brother can help me get through this, I will definitely repay your kindness." Wanyan Yuan sensed that Changsheng Prince's tone had softened and was overjoyed. Wanyan Liang glared at him. "Do you think I'm the kind of person who covets rewards?" Wanyan Yuan hurriedly explained. "It was a slip of the tongue. Please don't take it to heart." "Fine." Wanyan Liang sighed deliberately. "You just gave me such a generous gift. As the saying goes, I don't deserve a reward without doing anything. I'll give you an idea. As for whether it can help you or not, it'll depend on your luck." "Please give me some pointers, Big Brother," Wanyan Yuan said happily. "Get up first." Wanyan Liang reached out and helped Wanyan Yuan up. He hesitated for a while, as if thinking of how to phrase his words. Wanyan Yuan held his breath and didn't dare to speak, afraid that he would disturb his train of thought. After a long period of silence, Wanyan Liang finally said faintly, "Do you still remember the matter of great ancestor Taizong?" "Great ancestor?" Wanyan Yuan was startled. He clearly didn't understand what he meant. "That's all I can say. You can think about the rest yourself." Wanyan Liang smiled. Ignoring the other party's urging, he got up and left, leaving Wanyan Yuan alone in the private room in a daze. "I understand now." After some time, Wanyan Yuan suddenly slammed the table. His face was full of joy, and his breathing quickened. After Great Ancestor passed away, the throne didn't fall into the hands of Great Ancestor's son. Instead, it was inherited by his younger brother Taizong. Since there's this precedent, no one can say anything even if I do something. Although Song Qing-shu wasn't in the private room, he could roughly guess what had happened in the private room. However, his mind was more focused on the courtesan. Should I directly ask her about the other princesses in the laundry, or should I beat around the bush? Song Qing-shu was very distressed. He didn't know what the fifth princess was thinking. Although from an outsider's point of view, she should be longing for her homeland after so many years of suffering. Who knew if she had accepted her fate and was willing to become a slave to the Jin? If he asked her directly and she sold the information to the Jin people, Song Qing-shu wouldn't even have time to cry. Moreover, this matter was of great importance. Even if the fifth princess didn't betray him, she was a woman, and it was hard for her to keep secrets. If the news of him rescuing them was leaked, not to mention these northern Song princesses, even Song Yuanxiao wouldn't be able to save them. After thinking about it, Song Qing-shu decided to wait and see. He would first get in touch with the fifth princess and then decide what to do. The people of Autumn Fragrance Brothel received Changsheng King's instructions and enthusiastically led the way for him. When they arrived at the entrance of the courtesan king, Song Qing-shu waved his hand to drive those people away, took a deep breath, and pushed the door open. When Song Qing-shu entered the door, he deliberately paid attention to the courtesan. When she heard someone come in, her body obviously trembled. It seems that she hasn't completely fallen. Song Qing-shu nodded secretly, but he still needed further contact to make a final judgment. After locking the door, Song Qing-shu swaggered over to her. At this point, the courtesan had to stand up and salute him. "Your concubine pays respect to Lord Fuma." "Oh, you know me?" Song Qing-shu looked at the woman in front of him condescendingly. Her white skin seemed to be smeared with a layer of crystal rouge in the candlelight. Her facial features were delicate and small, coupled with the light willow leaf eyebrows. She was a typical beauty born in the water area of Jiangnan. "Just now Nanny Zhang came to pass a message, and I learned that the one I will serve tonight is Lord Fuma." Hua Kuei slowly replied. Her voice was soft and sweet, gentle and moving. "What's your name?" Song Qing-shu casually pulled a stool and sat down. Hua Kuei hesitated for a moment and finally answered, "My maiden name is Fujin." "Zhao Fujin?" Song Qing-shu furrowed his brows. "That's a terrible name." He was puzzled. Logically speaking, she was from a royal family, so there was no reason for her to have such a vulgar name. But when he thought about it again, he quickly felt relieved. In his previous life, those parents didn't just give their daughters names like Xian or Zi. At that time, it sounded nice, but who knew if people would laugh at these names a few hundred years later for being vulgar? A trace of anger appeared between Hua Kuei's brows when he heard the dense ridicule in Song Qingshu's words. However, he still lowered his head and grunted. Consort, you're right. Looking at her obedient appearance, Song Qingshu secretly frowned. It seemed that living as a captive for many years had smoothed out her edges, and he didn't know how much spirit she had left. I heard that you used to be a princess of a northern Song dynasty? Song Qingshu deliberately probed. Hua Kuei's face did not change at all. She replied indifferently, "That's all in the past. Now, I'm just a woman in a brothel." A woman in a brothel? Song Qingshu snorted. Speaking of which, you've received a lot of guests. Tonight is the first time I've received a guest. Hua Kuei subconsciously defended herself, but her expression quickly darkened. But I'm a withered willow. My previous encounters are not much different from receiving guests. Song Qingshu saw that she seemed to be in despair. It would be difficult for him to get any information out of her, so he decided to provoke her a little. I heard that you were Kai Jing's daughter-in-law. Your husband is called Kai Pa, right? Kai Pa. Hua Kuei's face showed a trace of reminiscence, but then she shook her head indifferently. I don't remember. Song Qingshu frowned. How could you even forget your husband's name? Husband. Hua Kuei seemed to be provoked, and she suddenly became a little emotional. What is a husband? A husband is a man who protects his wife. But what about him? When I was asked by the Jin people, he didn't even dare to make a sound. Why should I remember such a useless husband? In that situation, whether he made a sound or not, your ending would not have changed. Song Qingshu could not help but persuade her. Whether he has the ability to protect me or not is one thing. Whether he dares to protect me or not is another. What I need is his attitude. Hua Kuei's breathing became rapid, causing her soft breast to rise and fall violently. Drink some water. Let bygones be bygones. Song Qingshu picked up the porcelain pot on the table, poured a cup of water, and handed it to her. A strange look flashed in Hua Kuei's eyes. After taking the cup, she did not drink it directly. Instead, she looked at him quietly. Song Qingshu could not help but laugh. Why are you looking at me like that? Is there something on my face? You're not like the other Jin people. Hua Kuei only then realized that her eyes were a little rude. She quickly looked away and looked at the cup in her hand. She added in a low voice, "Also, this is wine, not water. I really didn't notice that." Song Qingshu suddenly felt embarrassed. He had been focusing on how to find out about the other princesses. He did not expect to make such a low-level mistake. The other Jin people are unbearably vulgar. When they see me, Hua Kuei's delicate body could not help but tremble. She hurriedly drank a mouthful of wine, and her cheeks quickly turned red. Perhaps it was the effect of the alcohol, but her emotions finally calmed down. When other people see me, they will only rush at me. But you're different. You actually talk to me, and you were shy. At the end of her words, her lips even curved into a slight smile. This is so King embarrassing. Song Qingshu did not expect that he would be pecked in the eye by a goose. His expression suddenly became a little ugly. In order to reverse the situation, Song Qingshu pulled her into his arms and snorted heavily. Since you like to be direct and violent, then don't blame me. Chapter 785. Song Qing saw that asking nicely was not going to work, so he decided to change his strategy. He wanted to break into her heart first, so he deliberately asked in a low voice, "Besides your husband, how many other men have you been touched by?" Of course, he was not a pervert. He was curious about the other party's experience, but he wanted to use this as a breakthrough point to bring the topic to her sisters who had also suffered, and then ask about the situation of those princesses. Hua Kuei's face paled. This question can I not answer? Song Qing reached out to pinch her chin, and the touch of her skin made him slightly startled. He did not expect that after so many years of torture, her skin would still be so delicate. He quickly came back to his senses and looked at her at such a close distance, full of oppression. No. Hua Kuei's eyelashes trembled, and an indescribable sadness flashed in her eyes. Since my lord wants to know, I will tell you. But after my lord hears it, don't be traumatized. If you lose interest later, all the money spent tonight will be wasted. Song Qing smiled faintly. In any case, it is not my money that I spent, and even if I lose interest, it is not a waste to hear the love history of the princesses. Love history? Hua Kuei's face showed a trace of ridicule. What kind of love history is this? When I was taken by your second prince, Wanyan Zonwang, that night he took me in the tent, and I naturally became his concubine. But now that I think about it, that time, besides dealing with his needs, it was not too hard to accept. After all, he could be considered to have doted on me. Not long after, he died. His wife thought that the reason he died young was because he used up all his energy on me. She scolded me as a femme fatale, so she sent me to the laundry yard. Song Qing's heart jumped, finally getting to the main topic. Life in a laundry yard was not so good. Every day, I was tortured by those stewards, and occasionally, I would be summoned by the emperor to serve in bed. Hua Kuei had just said this when Song Qing could not help but ask, "Emperor? Which emperor?" "Your Emperor Taizong, and later Emperor Shizong." Hua Kuei suddenly bit his lips so hard that blood almost seeped out. You Jin people are despicable and shameless. You have no etiquette or morals. The emperor forcibly took his nephew's woman, and the next emperor took advantage of the previous emperor's woman. You are truly a nation of beasts. Song Qing felt the body of the woman in his arms tremble violently, and subconsciously hugged her tightly. Thinking of the humiliation she had suffered all these years, a feeling of pity welled up in his heart. Don't worry, these days will be over soon. And the woman in his arms sighed faintly. In my opinion, the days of suffering have just begun. Although I am unfortunate, I only have to serve your emperor. But now that I have been banished to a brothel, I don't know how many men will humiliate me in the future. Song Qing frowned. Since that's what you think, why don't you kill yourself and end everything? This was what Song Qing found the most strange. If they could still bear the suffering before, it would be fine. But now that they were thrown into a brothel, did they still accept their fate? There was no way to escape the sea of suffering, but there was always a way to choose death. However, according to his inquiries during this period of time, there had never been a princess in the laundry yard who chose to commit suicide. Could it be that they had inherited the weak genes of Emperor Hui and Emperor Qin, and were so afraid of death that they would rather endure all this humiliation? You actually asked me this kind of question? Hua Kuei laughed somewhat crazily. Eugene people use that kind of demonic method to control us, and now you ask us why don't we kill ourselves? Hua Kuei stopped laughing and spat on Song Qing's face. Bah, despicable and shameless. Song Qing smiled bitterly. He did not know how he had offended her. After so long, this was the first time he had been spat on by a woman. Hua Kuei closed his ears after spitting, but the expected slap did not come. He opened his eyes to look at Song Qing, and just happened to meet his pitiful gaze. His heart could not help but tremble. He took out a handkerchief from his arms and wiped the water stains on Song Qing's face. You are really different from other Jin people. Perhaps my heart is not hard enough. Song Qing laughed self-deprecatingly. Hua Kuei's fingertips stroked the beard on his face, and could not help but laugh foolishly. I did not expect a bearded man like you to be so sentimental. Well, since you are not so annoying, I will serve you well tonight. Tonight was the first time she admitted her identity as a princess, but Song Qing was not happy. He noticed that her eyes had become blurred, as if she had become a little emotional. Song Qing could not help but feel a headache coming on. What the hell is this? I am here to talk about serious matters tonight. Just as he was hesitating whether he should tell her everything, Hua Kuei hooked his neck and whispered in his ear, I heard that you're the emperor's son-in-law? Yes. Song Qing nodded subconsciously. How does it feel to be a princess of the Jin kingdom? Hua Kuei bit her lips, and her voice seemed to be mixed with a trace of strange emotions. Not bad. Song Qing suddenly felt that his brain circuit was not enough to process the situation. This scene was not right. Tonight, I will let you know that compared to the princess of the Jin kingdom, the princess of the Song kingdom tastes better. Hua Kuei's voice seemed to come out from her throat, and it was unreasonably sweet. The woman in his arms was like a restless kitten, and it tickled Song Qing's heart. However, if he still did not realize that something was wrong, he would be too slow. He took the wine cup on the table and smelled it. Sure enough, it smelled of aphrodisiac, although the dosage was not large. Song Qing immediately understood. Perhaps the people of the laundry yard were also afraid that the Song Princess would not be obedient, so they secretly tampered with the wine. "What the hell do you want me to do?" Song Qing was immediately dumbfounded. The woman in his arms was like a beautiful snake, and it made him a little angry. He seemed to hear the seductive voice of a devil. "This woman is a beauty that 2 emperors and a prince of the Jin kingdom fought over. She was the most beautiful 5th princess of the Northern Song dynasty. Tonight, she originally belonged to you. Besides, she is not a virgin. She will definitely not blame you after this. There are not many opportunities like this where you only need to enjoy and not take any responsibility afterwards." In the end, Song Qing forcibly suppressed the idea of doing this woman on the spot. After all, her fate was already pitiful enough. How could he bear to stab her again? Song Qing carried her up and put her on the bed. When he was about to untie her clothes so that he could use his qi to help her expel the poison in her body, the window suddenly exploded and a cold light pierced straight at his back. Chapter 786. The yellow-robed woman raised her eyebrows and asked in disbelief, "Are you sure it's him?" "I'm absolutely sure." Hua Kuei began to tremble all over. "The cosmetic powder I used today is quite unique. This kind of fragrance can't be found anywhere else, but his body has my scent." As the yellow-robed woman listened, she suddenly thought of something. She opened the food box that Song Qingshu brought and found that there were 3 sets of bowls and chopsticks inside. Her expression finally changed. "The water is here." Song Qingshu walked in with 2 cups of tea. He noticed that the 2 women's expressions were a bit strange and couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong with you?" "Nothing." The yellow-robed woman, forced a smile, quickly passed the water over. "Okay." Song Qingshu eagerly moved over. He was thinking about how to find a chance to find out the relationship between the 2 women when he suddenly became playful. A cold light flashed in front of his eyes, and a murderous aura came toward him. He subconsciously raised his cup to block it, but the porcelain cup didn't even last for a blink of an eye before it exploded into pieces. The cold light continued to penetrate. The room quickly fell into silence. Song Qingshu's fingers tightly clamped the tip of the sword that was stabbing toward him. He looked at the owner of the sword and subconsciously shouted, "Are you crazy?" The yellow-robed woman snorted coldly. Her voice was as cold as iron. "Who are you?" It happened so suddenly that Song Qingshu didn't react for a moment. After hearing her question, he finally understood that he could no longer hide his identity. After all, how could a little eunuch have such good kung fu? Taking advantage of his momentary absent-mindedness, the yellow-robed woman flicked her wrist, and the sword in her hand spun rapidly. Song Qingshu could no longer hold on to it, so he hastily let go of the sword tip and retreated. "Listen to me first." The yellow-robed woman's face was as dark as water. Her lips were tightly shut. She attacked several times, each faster than the last and more ruthless than the last. She didn't give him a chance to speak at all. After dodging for a while, Song Qingshu saw that her attacks were all killing moves. He was enraged. "If that's the case, I'll have to offend you first." As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared from where he stood. The yellow-robed woman was shocked. She cried out in alarm and instinctively pulled back her sword to stab behind her. However, she was already injured, so her movements were inevitably a bit slower. Before she could stab, she felt a numbness in her waist, and all the strength in her body disappeared. Her body went limp, and she fell into a broad chest. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Hua Kuei had just seen that the yellow-robed woman had the upper hand, but in the blink of an eye, she was subdued. She was stunned until she saw Song Qingshu carrying the yellow-robed woman to the bed. She finally came to her senses, grabbed the vase beside her, and smashed it at his head. "Hey, woman, Aren't you a little too heartless? Just a moment ago, you were still being sweet and tender with me, and now you want to take my life? As if he had eyes on the back of his head, Song Qing-shu easily dodged the attack. He even caught the falling vase and prevented it from falling to the ground. It's really you. You're the son-in-law, Tang Quobian. Hua Kuei trembled. She had finally seen hope, but she didn't expect it to be shattered so quickly. She shuddered at the thought of falling into the hands of the Jin people again. How did you recognize me? Song Qing-shu asked curiously. You have the smell of my powder on you. Perhaps because she had succumbed to the despotic power of the Jin people for many years. Hua Kuei subconsciously answered. I see. Song Qing-shu suddenly realized that he had been careful enough, but he didn't expect a woman's racial talent. It was no wonder that women in his previous life could often detect their husband's infidelities by smelling the scent of other women on their husbands' bodies. Now that things had come to this, there was no need for him to pretend anymore. He pulled Hua Kuei into his embrace with one hand and hugged the yellow-robed woman with the other. He laughed loudly and said, what I said at Autumn Fragrance Brothel was right. I didn't think that I would have the chance to kill two birds with one stone so soon. Hua Kuei immediately became anxious and said, son-in-law, what do you want? Come at me directly. I will serve you well. Don't make things difficult for Ing Luo. Ing Luo? Song Qing-shu looked at the yellow-robed woman with a playful expression and said, is that your maiden name? The yellow-robed woman's face turned slightly red. She snorted and said, fifth sister, don't be afraid. This person is not the son-in-law of the Jin kingdom, Tang Quobian. Ah, then who is he? Hua Kuei was stunned. Song Qing-shu's heart trembled, but he said in a relaxed manner, fairy sister, tell me, if I'm not Tang Quobian, then who am I? Usually, he looked like a little eunuch. The yellow-robed woman didn't think much of it when he addressed her in such a respectful manner. But now that he addressed her so casually, she couldn't help but feel embarrassed and angry. Don't call me that. Song Qing-shu stared blankly for a moment, then laughed. I say, Lady Ing Luo, I'm afraid you don't understand the current situation. You're my captive, so why are you shouting at me? The yellow-robed woman ignored him and continued to analyze. The son-in-law of the Jin kingdom, Tang Quobian, is an official of the left minister. Although he is skilled in archery and horsemanship, his martial arts are more suited to killing enemies on the battlefield. He isn't good at fighting in Jianghu. But you can easily subdue me, so how can you be Tang Quobian? Song Qing-shu shrugged and said, it seems that you know a lot about the Jin kingdom, but this information is only on the surface. How do you know that I'm not a martial arts expert? He didn't want Tang Quobian's identity to be exposed, so he could only bite the bullet and continue to pretend. I'll know who you are when I see you. As soon as the yellow-robed woman finished speaking, she suddenly sat up straight in Song Qing-shu's arms. In an instant, she sealed the acupoints on his chest and tore off his mask. The yellow-robed woman's attack was as fast as lightning. In addition, it happened so suddenly that even Song Qing-shu fell into her trap. He couldn't help but laugh bitterly. I was careless. Since you know the 9E manual, you naturally know the method to unseal acupoints. When she saw Song Qing-shu's appearance clearly, the yellow-robed woman's shock was no less than his. How could it be you? Song Qing-shu smiled and said, Miss, who did you think I was? Thinking of the time they had spent together, the yellow-robed woman blushed and said angrily, I was wondering why I felt an inexplicable sense of disgust the first time I saw that little eunuch. So it was you playboy? Thank you for your compliment, miss. I don't deserve it. Song Qing-shu looked at her flushed face and couldn't help but praise her. Although you say you hate me, when you see a playboy like me, you still can't help but blush. It seems that my charm has broken through the sky. I'm not blushing. The yellow-robed woman hurriedly touched her cheeks and found that they were indeed a little hot. Her heart couldn't help but skip a beat. If you keep talking nonsense, I'll cut off your tongue. Miss, I'm afraid you won't. Song Qing-shu smiled even more brightly. The yellow-robed woman's eyebrows couldn't help but tremble. She could no longer hold back the anger in her heart. Raising her hand, she wanted to slap him. who knew that when her hand was halfway out, she would be stopped by Song Qing-shu. Song Qing-shu grabbed her wrist and pressed her entire body onto the bed. Looking at her from a close distance, he said, "Fairy Jiejie, in this world, you aren't the only one who knows the 9 manual. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."